All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this Region 12 Board of Education meeting, March 20, 2017. Can we come to order, please? Rebecca, would you take attendance, please?
Anthony Amato. Here. Valerie Anderson. Here. Alan Brown. Here. Let's not do anything. Greg Cava.
Here.
Rebecca Devine, I'm here. Michelle Gora. Here. James Hirschfield.
Here.
Stephanie Kolnick. Here. Jennifer Pody. Here. Lisa Rausch. Michael Sinatra. Peter Tagley.
Peter's not here? All right, so right now there are three folks missing, Lisa Rausch, Michael Sinatra, and Peter Tagley. All right, next item on the agenda, opportunity for the public to comment on agenda items. Is there anyone who'd like to address us? Yes, sir. Just go up and state your name and what town you're from, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Curtis Reed from Bridgewater. I'm going to read something I wrote, and it's about 3 minutes. When you have run businesses, nonprofits, and a town, Bridgewater in this case, like I have, you gain experience on how things should be done. This involves your clients, your board, fellow owners and managers, and almost 1,700 constituents. My preferred style of management can be summed up in a few key words: inclusion, fairness, respect for all, and honest communication. What has happened with the superintendent's proposed budget and how it affects our town and Burnham School does not reflect what should be our values. 11 days ago, the head of our PTO and I wrote the Region 12 Board and key administrators a letter outlining our dismay at this precipitous plan to turn Burnham into what amounts to a 2-room schoolhouse. Did I get a response yet? From anyone or a call? No. When I wrote the board in April 2016 about an executive session to discuss the superintendent's goals, I got no reply then for 2 weeks, which resulted in my filing an FOI complaint. Once that was dismissed last fall, a Chippewa teacher summarily filed an FOI request of me asking for AgSTEM student numbers from various correspondents. This information that I meticulously gathered was never picked up. One would guess it was a frivolous request that this person was instructed to do, a proverbial shot across the bow. I would have thought the administration knew all the numbers already. Should we also discuss how over $100,000 was spent recently on AgSTEM planning without the board's knowledge? I digress. Apologies. Burnham School's survival and the town's initiatives to attract young families are now at stake. You could also add the town's identity and declining real estate values to a potential casualty list if Burnham closes. For these reasons, we recently asked the board to consider lowering tuition-in costs for out-of-region students so that Region 12 is more in line with the local competition. There's been no reply to this idea as of this evening. Since Region 12 is probably still the highest cost per student and perhaps per superintendent in the state, you need to make every possible effort to attract more students and families. This warrants more spending on public relations, not less, and lowering tuition-in costs. You also know there are ways to balance student numbers across classes, schools, and towns, yet the administration's solution is to make Bridgewater a guinea pig without our input, without respect for parents and town officials, and without any appropriate or timely communication. In my book, this amounts to bad management and lacks oversight. I and many others would like you to fix these problems by not allowing a short-sighted solution to a small class size issue you have known about for many months. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Dwyer, and I am the president of the Burnham School PTO, and my remarks also time out at approximately 3 minutes, depending on how fast I read. A year ago, a stream of parents and taxpayers came to you and pleaded for a well-thought-out plan instead of hastily merged grades. This board listened and understood that there was no process, research, or sufficient time to do what was required, and that proposal was voted down. The administration then had 1 year to do the research, vet ideas, meet with parents, and get a consensus. It's mind-blowing to think that the principal and the director of curriculum did just that, but on a completely different charge of K-2 that does not have anything to do with the cut and merge being discussed tonight that fundamentally changes the way we educate our children. It was discussed that in the future we may need to merge grades 3 and 4. Never was it mentioned that we would merge grades 3 through 5 this year. Never. The consultant only had experience with the K-2 model. You had these numbers all year, and the class in question only changed by 1. Why then did you not begin this conversation then? There is still no research done towards the 3-5 or the 3-4 merge, nor has there been any presentations to parents or adequate preparation and training. And now there's no time for that. This is no longer just about numbers. We get the numbers, and we get the need for socialization. We commend the principal and the curriculum director for starting early in the year, not in the end, resulting in numerous meetings, a joint letter, etc. I so believed in this process that I paid for the survey company out of my own pocket because I knew this was a worthy effort. This is in stark contrast to what has happened just a week ago. Confused, betrayed, disingenuous, tricked, shocked, and angered are all words that I've heard from these parents. How can these two processes be so different? Is it because they're being led by different individuals? Is it because they have different agendas? As I struggle to lead these tired and anxious parents in a positive way to support this region, it gets more difficult every day. When another elementary school has just 6 children coming into their kindergarten class next year, yet are not merging, is this really about socializing children? Or is it just a continued vendetta against the smallest town and a desire to close their school by chipping away at them? I would love to be proven otherwise. Show me your resources, show me your time, show me your process, show me in your efforts to communicate with these parents sitting here tonight. In the conclusion of the superintendent's budget, a line reads, quote, "Promoting our region remains extremely important as we work to make Region 12 an attractive school district for families," end quote. Is the $3,250 the only amount in this budget to support this is advertising? If so, that is barely enough for a sign. We need this tuition in request granted now, and a correction I did hear from Valerie. As I've said before, we are now on a man-to-man game. When we lost one family this year, another shortly followed because they did not want to be in a class with so few boys. The point is, this decision will matter, and it will have consequences. There is no plan to retain or draw parents, only to deter. If we simply want to talk economics, which I really believe this is mostly about, then I would say thank goodness we didn't spend $40 million on a new elementary school that 3 towns couldn't fill right now, and we'd be up to our eyeballs in debt. I would also say that the excess dollars that the super spent on AgSTEM did not go unnoticed this year by the taxpayers and by these parents. Are we now paying for those excesses and missteps in this budget? And on a positive note, I got an email today, and I'd like to quickly read it to you. And it was from our school secretary at Burnham. Jennifer Clark, who's from New Milford, called regarding tuitioning in next year. Right now, she's just trying to find out if they could afford it. They have a son who will be entering 1st grade next year and a daughter who will be entering kindergarten for the following year. Can you call her and go over scholarships that are available for her and how it will work? And her number is, and I won't give that out. This is what I did today to bring people here. We need your help to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm not a good public speaker, so please forgive me if my voice trembles. My name is Diana Kelly. I first want to say thank you so much, everyone, and Dr. Costantino for listening to us. My name is Diana Kelly. I am the vice president of the Burnham PTO, and I have 3 kids. I have a middle schooler, a 4th grader, and a 3-year-old. So needless to say, I've put in a lot of time as a school in the school community, and I will have many more years to follow. So we'll get to know each other. So with that being said, I want to say to keep a positive tone in my message, but I also want to voice my concern because I want to be able to send my youngest through the Burnham School, but also I don't want to be doing this for the next 7 years that she's going to be in school, or that my kids are going to be in school. As a PTO member, I feel in the past years we have gone above and beyond what's expected. We have held many meetings brainstorming on how we can attract families from other towns and how we can entice realtors to think about Bridgewater as that great place to settle down, have your family, and have your kids go to a really great school. Last spring, we held an open house at the school. We offered tours and talked with the families about our experiences at Burnham. We were able to gain a couple new students that way. Although a couple of children coming into the school doesn't save us from the decline in enrollment that we've had, but we still felt like it was a very big win in our eyes because we felt like we were actually making a difference and not just sitting around waiting for the heavens to send us children that we so desperately need. But with these small wins come some big setbacks, and these setbacks are discouraging for us parents who are working so hard to fix this, which is out of our control. So more and more parents are becoming discouraged and angered, as well by the lack of future vision for Burnham, and we've lost a few children due to this, actually just this year. Feeling like we had no better options, we have fully researched and spoken with professionals who have successfully merged grades and ages, like Carolyn was mentioning, so our parents can have some security in our children's education. We've vetted ourselves, also as Carolyn was saying, and teachers in the preparation for the merge of grades K through 2, which logistically makes sense. And although it's not ideal, we've expected and are determined to make the K2 merge a huge success before and after Ms. D'Souza's return from maternity leave. But as another curveball comes flying, and it felt like another blow to the gut for us after receiving the news of a further merge of grades 3 through 5 and the loss of a full-time teacher, how can we attract parents to our schools and assure current families that their child is receiving the best education possible? As we are proud of our award-winning school, our Blue Ribbon School, also, how can we ensure the future of Chippewa if these proposed changes are made to the school that funnels future students? Like you, we are representatives of our town, our school, and most importantly, our children and their futures on our actions today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Jeremy Tendler from Washington. I was up here a year ago when we had a very similar meeting. And basically, the argument is the same as it was a year ago. My sons, Jacob and Elijah, are both in Burnham. So although we live in Washington, our kids do attend Burnham School. So one of the things I'll tell you is that being their ages, they have experienced, Jacob was in K by himself and then K1, and now Elijah was in kindergarten 1, and now he's one of the olders in that classroom. And this year, Jacob's in 3rd grade. So we had the experience of having him in a class with peers only. And he's made tremendous growth. Like, it's unbelievable to see how much impact having an actual teacher that's focused on teaching just the curriculum for that class. It's amazing. I'm extremely concerned that, budget aside, I'm a parent first, and what's most important to me is the education of my children. So I think we can get beyond what the budget is, and you as the school board have really only one job, and that is to make sure that we are providing the best possible education for each child in our district. Right? It's not really that complicated. Is the mission any different than that? And I guess my point is, if we're going to continue to merge classes or talk about merging classes, I'm not sure that that's the best way that we can educate our kids. You're going to put he'll be a fourth grader next year, in with children that are coming into third grade and going to be fifth graders too. And you're going to try and ask a teacher to cover the curriculums of those 3 grades. Basically what you're doing is, and you're losing a teacher to boot, how is it possible that you're going to provide the best education possible to my kids? And if you can answer that question, you're smarter than I am. I guess, Dr. Constantino, I'm sure you've done plenty of homework, but I don't see it. I don't see how it's possible that, especially now that Jacob is in the position where he's taking standardized testing and they are spending so much of the school year just prepping them for that test in third grade. Now you're going to be trying to prep the third graders for the test, which is different than the fourth graders test, which is different than the fifth graders test. And you've got different categories of testing for those 3 grades. How are you going to teach my kids anything besides a test at that point? How is the teacher going to have time to prepare a lesson plan? I challenge you to come up with an answer for those. And if you can tell me that this is the best way to educate our children, I'll stand behind you. But I've tried and I've thought about it and I've looked for research to back it up, and I can't find any research that says this is the best way to educate our children. And that's where I come down on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I'll just take a few minutes of your time to talk about this issue. Can you hear me okay? It's a little hard to hear from there. My name is Patrick Dwyer. I'm a Bridgewater resident, also a parent of a Burnham School student. And for this few comments, I'm actually the chairman of the Board of Trustees for Bridgewater as well. And I think that's important because others have articulately sort of focused on the issue at hand regarding the budget. I wanted to bring up just a couple quick points if I could. As you know, the board's role, as is the role of the Board of Trustees, is oversight. And I think that's what we're asking for now in this particular moment. As a Board of Trustees, we manage a multi-million-dollar set of trusts with the goal of betterment of the town of Bridgewater and its residents. Like yourself, our board must balance the impulses of short-term thinking versus long-term investment. And I would ask the board to show restraint in approving any idea that lacks the well-documented thought process behind it, just as we reject unproven trust investments for our trust funds. Second, and this is more of an observation regarding the budget process as a whole. One observation I've had over the past 13 years of Region 12 budget votes that I participate is not every no vote is about the percent of the budget has been raised or lowered. However, the budget vote outside any referendum, which we've had plenty of in this region, or an open seat for a Board of Education allows the residents of the region a voice in the direction and leadership of the region and should be interpreted more broadly than just an up and down vote about a particular dollar amount. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. My name is Julie Stewart. I'm a Bridgewater resident and I'm a Chapag graduate. I also serve on the board of the Chapag Student Project Foundation and have been an active supporter of AgSTEM. I have 2 kids here at the high school. I have many reasons to be proud of Chapag. Most recently, I attended the World Affairs Forum and was incredibly impressed with the students who participated on the panel. Their level of knowledge, unique perspectives, and thorough preparation was truly outstanding. I wrote a press release on the school's behalf, which I hope will be published soon. Unfortunately, I'm here tonight because I'm not proud of what is happening regarding the budget proposal, which would deeply impact the Burnham School. Under the current proposal, in 1 year, the Burnham School would go from 5 grades to just 2, one step away from the one-room schoolhouse of yesteryear. Last March, there was a parade of parents here, some very emotional, because they felt blindsided by the proposal to combine 3 grades at Burnham, K, 1, and 2, a step that had never been taken in the history of the region. The board listened and voted to delay the proposal 1 year so that the parents, community, teachers, and students would be prepared and given proper training, communication, and support. This approach was accepted by most, with the understanding that it would be thoroughly evaluated after the initial year to see if, in fact, this combination of 3 grades is the ideal model for our students. The proposal on the table now is the same drastic and surprising attempt to additionally combine grades 3, 4, and 5, making what was a traditional elementary school into a massive experiment impacting the entire school in 1 year. This proposal has not been vetted. Teachers haven't been trained at these grade levels where testing requirements and curriculum are very different, and it's the same short-sighted and rushed action that enraged our community 1 year ago. Why is this happening now? What happened to our commitment to a well-thought-out and thorough process? Is a zero budget more important than doing things the right way? This time, parents are both angry and despondent. They feel Burnham has been targeted 1 time too many. Yes, we have the smallest population and the smallest school, but when rushed, impactful decisions are proposed in a vacuum, attracting new families and enthusiasm for those of us leading these efforts wane. For the first time, I'm seeing viable options for Burnham to leave the region and be a standalone elementary school. A Sherman-like model where students can then choose from several middle and high schools, including Chapag. Then our community can be proud again. We can grow our school creatively and with vigor and not be saddled by hasty decisions that severely damage our reputation and chances of success. It could be a win-win for all of us. Our small problem will no longer be your problem. Yes, we realize that a massive campaign would have to take place for Bridgewater to remove its school from the region, and that change would require the approval of all 3 towns. It will surely be a fight that none of us want to be in, but many feel like this may be the best chance for our town and our town's children to succeed. We cannot continue to be part of a region that mismanages its smallest school by bypassing every rational process with no consideration except the bottom line. I hope all board members will vote no on the proposed 3, 4, 5 combo grade at Burnham School for this upcoming school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else in the meantime? Rebecca, do you see anyone coming in? Well, I'd like to give them the chance if they're on their way in the door. I mean, if they're on their way in. All right, well, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll continue along with the agenda if these.
Ed Wainwright from Bridgewater. In the past, there have been numerous opportunities where classes were held in Bridgewater, a grade was held in Bridgewater, and no equivalent grade in Roxbury. Similar things occurred in Roxbury, where there was a merge of Bridgewater and Roxbury children together. This is a board decision. This is not a legal matter. This is a board decision. If you want, we'll be glad to have a board member who sat on the board, whose son was a resident of Roxbury, was no second grade in Roxbury that year. There was no third grade the following year in Roxbury. And the fourth year, it was only fourth grade in Bridgewater. That board member will be glad to come and testify that. We have another member of the education community, which taught in Bethel and was a part of the administration in Bethel, and in Danbury, whose daughter went to school in Roxbury, lived in Bridgewater. This is a board decision. As I've heard numerous people say that that's a legal matter. That's not a legal matter. The board can decide to combine classes on a temporary basis. We have historical precedent behind that. The board member who sat here was Jay Kronfeld. He'd be glad to come and testify. And the Bethel person who worked at Bethel was Elliot Woolwich. He's a long history. Not only did he work in the Danbury system, but he worked in Bethel, and he was a board member in Berlin, Connecticut. So,
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Angela Machurulo. I have a third grader and a fourth grader at Burnham. I also have a seventh grader at Chapag. And my seventh grader actually spoke here last year when we were considering a merge, Evan Warner. Evan did want to speak tonight, but he is at a class. I will tell you, though, that Evan has recently been named a Pop Warner First Team All New England Scholar. And that is based on his grades coming out of Burnham and into Chapag. He is the only New England scholar first year coming out of Brookfield Pop Warner with 183 participants, and he'll now be eligible for All-American Pop Warner Scholar. And again, that is based on the education he received at Burnham. I want the rest of my kids to have that education. Last year we were here talking about a K-2, and there had been a presentation down in Bethel that was a complete disaster. There was then another presentation that we had at Burnham that went much better. I am not necessarily opposed to multi-age. I'm not necessarily opposed to multi-grade. I am opposed to doing things on the fly. We researched last year. This board was kind enough to give us a year reprieve to research a going forward on a K through 2 or a multi-age, multi-grade, and we've done that. And I think the parents are comfortable. I think we feel that our kids will be getting a good education. Again, I'm not necessarily opposed to a 3-4 or a 4-5 or a 3-5, but don't just throw it at us. Don't use our kids as the guinea pigs, because if we screw this up, there's no going back. There is no second chance to do third grade again. It's not like you bought a bad car and go, well, I'm going to get rid of it and try again. It doesn't work that way. Give us the reprieve. Last year you told us we needed numbers. We brought in numbers. We have 10 incoming kindergartners, as I assume you know. We are marketing to the older grades. Last year, you also threw out that arbitrary number of 7. If you don't have 7 or more, you have to have a merge. You have to have a merge. From what I understand, Booth had 6 kindergartners coming in. I'm not hearing anything about a K-1. Again, it can't just be arbitrary and capricious. We can't just say, well, this is how it's going to be and throw it at us. Give us time to do it the proper way. Decide if it's multi-age or multi-grade, do the research, and do it correctly. This is a process. So what we don't want to happen is, no, I understand that there's no increase for the board. Back when I was growing up, there was a saying on one of the commercials, I believe for the United Negro College Fund, that said, you think education's expensive? Try ignorance. This is a process. No one expects, I don't expect the Board of Education not to increase the budget every year. That's something I'm happy to pay for. That's something my neighbors are happy to pay for. I will pay for an increase in the board to educate my kids to do it correctly, and I ask that you consider this very carefully and give us the time that you promised us. You promised us time to make Burnham come up with our numbers, and we're doing it. Just continue to please give us the time and give our kids the education that they deserve so I can have 2 more New England top scholar first team kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Angelica Jacob, and I am one of the newer residents to Bridgewater. We moved to Bridgewater about a year and a half ago, and this is my children's second year in Burnham and in Chippewa. I have an 8th grader, a 5th grader, and a 4th grader, so they will all be, well, the 2 younger ones will be affected by this change, which we were very surprised by because, again, when we were here last year, we were talking about a K-2 merge, and there was no talk of 3, 4, and 5 being merged. On a personal note, I have to say that I work in the Brookfield Public Schools in the elementary school, and there are many, many young educators there with young families who are moving, selling, relocating, and everybody's kind of making their way around the region. And one of them is the mother of a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and is currently pregnant with her 3rd. She happens to be my oldest daughter's 2nd grade teacher, so I've known her for a long time, and she's taught in Brookfield for a long time. She has seen the flux in Brookfield over the many years. They are still in a state of flux, I guess, because they have their enrollment is increasing. They have their own issues. Every district has their own issues, but she is in the unique position of now looking for a larger home to suit her family, and has come to me many, many times. We work together, so we see each other very often. And we've had many discussions about this, and I have been very frank and honest with her about the issues that Burnham is facing. She loves Bridgewater. You know, you talk to anybody, you say, oh, I love Bridgewater, I'd love to live in Bridgewater. Well, if you have children that are entering the schools, that adds another layer to the factor of where you're going to live. That is usually first and foremost what you consider. And unfortunately, based on the situation going on at Burnham, at the moment, her husband and her have decided that Bridgewater will not be an option for them, and I was very sad to hear it, but I do understand. I'm also going to be reading 2 parents, should I say, are not able to attend tonight, so they have passed along emails to me and asked me to read them to the board. The first is from Crystal Tochalovsky, and she was not able to attend, but says, one thing we learned at Burnham School, as Burnham School developed the K-2 approach, is the additional strain a combined classroom puts on our teachers. They need to constantly assure that each grade and learning level is achieving the proper curriculum goals. Simply telling a school to combine grades and cut a teacher from the combined class with no research or development to support this idea is not only irrational but irresponsible. Please do not equate combining grades with combining learning levels. It is unwise to assume that the needs of 3 grades with children of multiple learning levels per grade will be sufficiently met with this approach. It was clear to us that a combined class has social benefits for the children but that eliminating a teacher from this approach would put its educational benefits in jeopardy. Any decision that affects the overall education of our children should require the same research and rigor that Burnham School provided in their K-2 presentation. Simply announcing that you are cutting teachers at a meeting without any prior communication with the schools is disconcerting. Since moving here 7 years ago, every single year has been a struggle in this regional school district. Every year there is something that we need to come here to defend. And that was Crystal's thoughts. And then I have one other email that I just received recently from another parent who was not able to attend. And this is short and just says, I can say this for sure. If I was in the position of purchasing a home at this point in time, because of the scenario tentatively in place, I would have ruled Bridgewater out as an option. And that is from Cindy Maglio. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Joy Rupert, and I live in Bridgewater. I have 3 children. I was here last year for the discussion when merging grades 2 to 3 was brought up. Wisely, it was decided that more research was needed before combining those grades. As you know, a consultant was brought in, and it was determined that merging K through 2 was a better fit than 2-3. Dr. Cosentino came to our PTO meeting at the beginning of the year and said that K2 merge was being looked at because her numbers at that time showed that the 2017-2018 kindergarten class was going to be small at only 6 children. And like I said at that meeting, those numbers were not completely accurate because not all children go to reach, like my son and another one of the children in his preschool class. But it didn't matter, and a lot of time and money was spent on implementing a K through 2 merge. And while I don't completely agree that a K through 2 is necessary at this time, since K1 class will have at least 13 children next year and second will have 9, I am okay with it and even a little cautiously optimistic about it. The teachers and administration have researched this type of class combination, visited a K through 2 class, discussed with parents our questions and concerns. We've seen example schedules and know exactly what the plan is and how it will work. We've had the opportunity to talk with the consultant who taught K through 2 for many years and a parent with children in her K through 2 class. I will have 2 children in the K through 2 class next year at Burnham. And now a 3 through 5 merge was thrown into the budget this year. Grades 3 through 5 are very different than K through 2. And to my knowledge, no research was done on merging grades 3 through 5. Grades 3 through 5 have testing and other factors to consider. It is irresponsible to rush into this kind of change, and I worry about the impact it will have on the children in those classes. My question is, if the concern was about the class size of grade 3, which I completely understand and I agree it is very small, why were the resources spent on merging K through 2 all year when they should have been focused on the best way to address the small class size that will be in grade 3? There are other options than merging 3 through 5 this year. At the December Board of Ed meeting that I attended, it was recommended that K through 2 be combined this year and 3 through 5 will begin team teaching certain subjects. We would see how the K through 2 class works next year before making any other significant changes to our school. I know that we all want what is best for all the children in our region, and rushing into merging K through 2 and 3 through 5 in the same year is just not it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to let you know that.
Excuse me, sir. Would you tell us your name and what town you're from?
Matt Denning from Bridgewater.
Thank you.
I don't know a lot of the details of what's going on. I just found out about this last night, and I spoke to my son Ethan about it, who's in 5th grade, and he thought this was going to be in effect immediately. And he said, "Dad, I don't want 3rd graders in my class. This is crazy. I don't get it." And and then my other son, who Liam, is in 4th grade. And he said, "That's ridiculous, Dad. How could they do that?" So, I just want to let you know that the kids are all going to be it's going to be a great turmoil for them. Like Jeremy said, I'd like to hear more information about how you can prove that this is going to be the best thing for their education. And that's really all I got to say.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Well, hold on, let me just a minute. Is there anyone else who wants to address the board? All right, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it. Yes, Valerie, go ahead.
Just a couple of things. I just want to set the record straight. First off, Ed made a suggestion about merging classes across town lines. A great idea, but we have a recent letter from our attorney citing the suit of Region 12 versus Town of Bridgewater, in which we cannot do that. It was a great idea. Wish we could, but we can't. That's number one. Number two, I just want Curtis to know, well, I didn't want to engage. I just wanted to give you information. I just want to give you information. Here,
Valerie.
you can read it. Thank you. But the other thing is, Curtis, I want you to know that I have been communicating both in email and on the phone to Carolyn about the excellent idea of some kind of reduced tuition to encourage your surrounding towns, particularly Bridgewater has some great surrounding towns that could feed into Bridgewater. I think the board's going to talk about it, but we took it on at Board of Finance first. So we will be getting to that very soon and very seriously, because I think it's worthwhile. The other thing is that we're going to have a budget conversation soon. It's on the agenda. The board has not had a chance to talk about the budget yet. We're going to go through the numbers, talk about it. The superintendent prepared this, and now it's up to us to really work the numbers and figure it out and adopt it or not, make changes or not. But just to let you know what is being considered, seriously considered, and likely going to be the case, is that we're looking at a combination of K2, 3, 4, and 5, standalone. And so it would be K2 with 2 dedicated master teachers, 3, 4 with 11 kids, with 1 experienced teacher, and then 5 would be standalone with, at this point, 8 kids. So the split is different than perhaps what has been rumored. So there'd be 3 classes, 4 dedicated teachers. This is a decision the principal of that school is going to make, but that's what we're looking at now.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on in the agenda then. Next is the consent agenda, which is approval of minutes education meeting February 27, 2017, our special meeting March 6, 2017, our business meeting March 6, 2017, our retreat March 13, 2017, and then field trips to Tarrytown Music Theater in Tarrytown, New York. Is there anyone who wants to remove anything from the consent agenda? All right, not seeing anyone, then the consent agenda is approved. Next is report of the chair. We have a very busy agenda tonight, a lot to cover, so I don't have any further report. Superintendent's report, Dr. Costantino.
Yes, thank you. March is Board Appreciation Month, so we got you some beautiful little mugs there with some candy, so thank you for all you do. It is a volunteer job, and it really has our volunteers working very hard, endless hours, not only at board meetings, but on committees, and phone calls, and emails, and projects. So thank you very much for all you do for our children and our 3 communities and our schools. We appreciate it. Personnel, we have Nancy Hagan, who is resigning. We have a field trip, the senior class trip to Six Flags. And then we have a World Trade Center, Quincy Market in Boston trip, and that's grade 12. So we have a lot of, the Six Flags, I believe, it's all one trip, am I right? It's all one trip, yes, it's weekend. Yes, partying with Mrs. Gallo, so it'll be fun. So that's my superintendent's report. I do want to just make a correction on number 6, Next Generation Accountability. Only Mrs. DeBrito will be presenting. There are other names there, but it's just Teresa tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the superintendent? All right, thank you. Then item 6, Next Generation Accountability, Teresa DeBrito. Teresa?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
There is a packet coming around, and I do want to preface by saying I have really good news to share. This is like the district report card. This is a continuation of the presentation I did in the fall. That was the released standardized test results, but this is a comprehensive next generation accountability report that the State Department of Education has all school districts complete, and so we do get scoring. So I do want to go through it with you page by page, so try not to go ahead. I know it's very tempting to turn the page. So I'm going to take us right to page 3, the background information. So last year in March, the State Department of Education officially announced the launch of the Next Generation Accountability System. This system includes indicators for measuring how schools are providing a quality education and preparing students for their future. There are 12 indicators, and we're going to go through each one. Indicator 1 is academic achievement. That is how our students score on standardized assessments, and that presentation I had originally given in the fall. Indicator 2, brand new this year, academic growth. That indicator actually compares each student, grades 4 through 8, how they did last year on the standardized assessments and how they did this year. And the state determined target growth, certain number of points for each particular student depending on where they were at the year before. Indicator 3, assessment participation rate. It is a requirement that at least 95% of the students participate, and so we will look at our results shortly. Indicator 4, chronic absenteeism. This is specific to students that miss 10% or more of the school year. Number 5, preparation for college and/or career readiness. This has to do with coursework that students take. Indicator 6, preparation for college and/or career readiness. This has to do with the examinations, and we're going to talk about that when we get to that particular indicator. Indicator 7, on track for high school graduation. 8, graduation for the 4-year adjusted cohort. And that has to do with students that start freshman year and within 4 years they graduate. And indicator 9 is a 6-year adjusted cohort graduation. We do have students that need a little more time to complete high school, and so they do get credit if they complete it within 6 years. Indicator 10, post-secondary entrance. That's specific to students entering a 2- or 4-year post-secondary college program. Indicator 11, physical fitness. And indicator 12, arts access. And so we're going to get into very specific details about each. I do want you to know that districts and schools earn an accountability index, and that's based on the percentage of total possible points and a performance index for student assessment results. And so the following pages go into the significant detail. So on page 4, the first column has the indicator. The middle column is the description for that indicator, and the third column are the results. So indicator 1A, there are 4 parts to indicator 1. English Language Arts Performance Index for all students in the district. And I have a description there. This is for grades 3 through 8 who take the Smarter Balanced or the alternate assessment and the CMT and CAPT and grade 11 SAT. 100% of the target was achieved. 1B, ELA Performance Index for high-need students. This is a population of students that are either receive free or reduced lunch, that are students with disabilities, have an IEP, receiving special ed services, or are English learners. They look at how that subpopulation performs. And here we have just close to 83% of the target achieved. 1C, Math Performance Index for all students. Here we're looking specifically at mathematics, grades 3 through 8 and grade 11. Significant gain. 95.5% of the target was achieved, up from 88.7 last year. 1D, Math Performance Index for high needs students. That's that subpopulation I described. 76.4% of the target was achieved, up from 70.9%. 1E, Science. Performance Index for all students, and the Science CMT is grades 5 and 8, and then we do have the capped for grade 10. 88% of the target is achieved, up from 84.8%. 1F, Science, that is the performance index for high needs subpopulation. 73.5% of the target achieved, up from 68.4%. Page 5. Indicator 2 has to do with the average percent of growth target achieved, and this is the new indicator because last year there was no previous year to compare to, so this is the first time that we're actually getting a percentage for the growth target achieved. So our results, 2A for English Language Arts, all students, just about 80% of the target growth was achieved. What I want to explain here for target growth is that if a student doesn't make all the targeted points, let's say they started at a baseline and the state feels they can grow 71, an additional score of 71 points. The student gets the percentage that they are able to acquire. So if they get half of that, then we'll get half credit. So it doesn't mean that students aren't growing, it's just how many of them actually achieved the targeted rate that the state set for them. 2B, ELA, again, this is for high needs, that subpopulation group. Same, just about 80% of the target growth was achieved. 2C, Math, for all students, 83.2% of the target growth achieved. And 2D, Math, average percent of growth target achieved for high needs subpopulation, 76.8% of target growth achieved. So these are the only grades and subjects that we are able to actually get a score for targeted growth. The reason is because we don't have contiguous grades testing in science. We test in 5th, we test in 8th, we test in 10th. We don't have grades back to back to assess. That's why this particular category is for grades 4 through 8, because we assess in grades 3 through 8. So there is a previous year to compare student growth to. I just want to explain that. The other thing I want to share is I looked at every single individual student and matched up where they performed last year, where they performed this year for ELA and for math. And per school, many schools, 100% of them are showing growth. Again, keep in mind that the state has a particular target, but it doesn't mean that our students aren't growing. So we're definitely digging in to the results. Indicator 3, participation rates. 100% of the target was achieved. 4A, chronic absenteeism for all students. 97.2% of the target achieved. This is a significant increase, up from 85.2% last year. And 4B, the high needs subpopulation, again, a significant increase. This year, 91.4% of the target was achieved, up from 71.2%. I do want to explain a little bit about absenteeism. The building administrators and the staff, they send out letters. They call families. They'll get counselors to communicate with families. At times, Allie also gets involved. If there is a serious absenteeism, she wants to make sure that there isn't something that we're missing. There isn't another reason that the student isn't coming to school. And we'll have PPTs for students in that category. We try to explain to families how disruptive absences can be. And kids get sick, we all get sick, we absolutely understand that. But when they're young and they miss several days, it's very different than when they're in the secondary level. Because when you're in one classroom with one teacher, you come back, the teacher has much more flexibility. They're with you all day long. They make sure that you will catch up, and they'll find time to work with you. At the secondary level, you miss a couple of days, you come back and you have to go to 7 different classes, and everyone is in a different place than when you were last there, and it can be incredibly overwhelming. And so we try to explain all of that to families, and so there's much more initiative on the child in the secondary level to do the catching up, because they have so many teachers, and the teachers only have them for about 50 minutes per class. So it's just important to understand that. And so that communication is very, very important, and the schools are doing a phenomenal job. Indicator 5, preparation for college and career readiness. This indicator is assessing the percent of students in grades 11 and 12 who during their high school years actually completed 2 courses either in career and technology or AP or ECE or 2 workplace experiences. And we met 50% of the target, up from 39.3. Indicator 6. That's the early college experience. We have students that take the UConn course, and so they will definitely get credit for that. Certainly. Indicator 6, preparation for college and career readiness. This is the percent passing the examinations. So for AP, they would need to get a 3 or higher. Or for the new SAT, they achieved the 480 for ELA or 530 for math. Both of those minimums would have to have been achieved. Or the ACT that they received, or they met the benchmark for 3 of the 4 exams. So there's lots of opportunity to get credit for this indicator. And 81.4% of the target was achieved, up from 66.7. Page 6. Indicator 7. On track to graduate. How the state measures this is they look at the 9th grade students, and they look to see how they did academically. And the students have to have received at least 5 full credits and no more than 1 F in a semester core course. And here, 100%, we're on 100% on track. Indicator 8, 4-year graduation, all students. Percent of students who graduated with their class of 2015. So for Chippewa, 100% of the students start off as freshmen and graduated within the 4 years. Indicator 9, 6-year graduation. So these are students who did not graduate within the 4 years, but they have the additional 2 years. And so here we're at 92.5% of the target achieved, up from 90.4. Keep in mind that for district results, any student that is outplaced, although they're not a student at Chippewa, is also calculated into this category because they're still our student. Indicator 10, post-secondary entrance. This has to do with the percent of students who graduated in 2015, and then the state looks at all of 2016 to see if within that year did they enroll in a 2 or a 4-year college or university. And 98.6% of the target was achieved, a significant gain here as well, up from 89.5%. Physical fitness. We have a physical fitness assessment that is given in grades 4, 6, 8, and 10. And the state has 2 categories: the percent of students that take it in each of those grades and the percent who actually met the benchmark in all 4 areas. And the 4 areas are sit and reach, curl up, push up, and the mile run. Now our participation increased, but the performance has decreased. And I dug into this, and I have to say our youngest children are having a tough time with push-ups. So we're going to have to increase some push-ups. And so when you look at the results, it's very interesting because separately, it looks fantastic. Like I think it may have been 8th grade, sit and reach was like 100%. But they have to meet the benchmark in all 4 areas in order for us to get the credit. So we're definitely looking to have them do some extra physical activity. I'm not even sure how many push-ups I could do. But the older kids tend to complain about the mile run. I have to say, that's not one of their favorites. And then the last indicator, arts access, has to do with music, arts courses, and here 100% of the target achieved, up from 25.5%. I do want to remind you that last year we discovered that the course codes did not match the state codes, and so the school worked tirelessly. You've heard how Lori really worked with the guidance department and with Karen to make sure that we were all in line, and so we definitely see that this is more representative of accurate information compared to last year. Page 7. We do have schools of distinction. I want to share with you how the schools of distinction are determined. There are 2 criteria. One, highest performing, the top 10% for each level. They did group elementary and middle and high school. For this particular district, because our secondary school is 612, our middle school is grouped with our high school. And the second one is highest growth, top 10% of points earned for academic growth for all or high need students. And all of our elementary schools had been recognized in both highest performing and highest growth. I wanted to bring your attention to the bottom of that page. The district overall results, 86.1% is our index. You then underneath that see the actual percentages for each school. It's just in alphabetical order. I want to make a special notation here to let you know that they do limit the number of schools. And so Chippewa was really within 3 percentage points of being a school of distinction. It's just how the schools are ranked in order. And of the elementary, middle schools, and high schools, only 65 and only 5, respectively, received the highest performing school of distinction recognition. And of the 62 schools that received the highest academic growth for all students recognition, all were elementary. And they did have this additional category, highest academic growth for high needs students. There were 53, all elementary. Page 8 is something to really celebrate. We are number 1 in the DIRG. Page 9, I compared our district to districts in DIRG A and DIRG B, and we outperformed all the districts that were listed there. Yeah. So it, as I said in the fall, it's a true testament to the educators. They're really focused on doing what's best for the kids, and the principals, the administrators really working with the teachers. And so it is something to be commended. They need to be commended, and we're very, very proud of them. The following pages are just the individual reports. So page 10, and I know it's very tiny print, is for the district, Regional School District 12. Page 11 is just a bar graph representing the same numbers that are on page 10, which is the breakdown that I just went page by page and shared with you. And then each individual school has their own report, and that's on the following pages. Elementary schools, and then Chippewa is also there in case you wanted to dig even deeper.
That it?
That is it for my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions, Valerie? Are there?
Thank you, thank you. This is wonderful. All you ladies in the front, it's just wonderful, all the teachers. Have you prepared a snappy press release? I think I saw something in one of the papers, but really snappy, so that, it could really get the attention it needs.
Yes, there was some information in the paper a couple of weeks ago. You're right. But we'll definitely do that.
All right, any other questions? Anthony?
Thanks, Teresa, and to the district. Congratulations for the scores. Question: I found as a curiosity, why is the middle school, high school lumped together versus
Because-
other districts where they're broken out? Is it because we're physically connected?
Yes.
So,
We are called
so that's not our
Chippewa
choice.
Valley. We are Chippewa Valley School. There is no other name, no other school for middle or for high school. So they did group us together. We would not have had growth index there for the secondary school if it wasn't for the middle level, because the high school doesn't have any growth to compare to. They're only assessed for science in grade 10
Right.
and then grade 11 for the SAT. So that would not have happened if we were just a high school.
Okay, thank you.
Alan?
Yeah, this is just maybe, I imagine you know this, but it's just a general question. Looking at the, and I happen to be on Booth, looking at the elementary schools.
Yes.
They have 4-year graduation and 6-year graduation numbers here. How do you do that for elementary school? I mean, this isn't something that's going to wait for 8 years until they can fill in past years. How is it that I was expecting the NA.
Right.
But then I was wondering how they have a target of 94 and how they have a state average of 78.6.
So that's still a target. It's still an A, though. If you look at the first column, it still says NA. The target doesn't go away just because we don't have any particular students. If you're looking, I'm looking at Booth right now, and the first column, the index rated for the school, they're all NA.
Right, as they should be. I'm just wondering why those are even factors for elementary school.
This report is consistent for every school, no matter what level the school is. You could have a K2 in some district, and this is the same report, and only what's applicable is filled in.
Anyone else? Michael?
Just a question, Teresa, since this is such good news, does this get sent to colleges that are looking at our applicants?
Well, if it's in the profile the school sends out, that's something that the counselors, I don't know if they typically do that.
That sounds like a great idea, because it's such good news. So.
Right.
All right. Anyone else? Anthony?
I did, when you look at the rack and stack in the DERG, was it region 17 is right on our tail. So with an eye towards continuous improvement and what can we do to improve the scores, I know we fixed the problem with the art, with categorizing the art program, and the chronic absenteeism is something that's being focused on. But the one score that I did notice at the high school that went down year over year was the first one, the ELA index for all students at the high school, or the middle school, high school. So do you have any insight into?
It was just within a percentage point, though. I think we were pretty flat.
Was it tight?
Yeah.
I thought
Oh,
it
yeah.
went
It was.
down.
Oh, yeah. But we definitely met the target.
Yeah, that I saw.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it was right. We're flat in that particular area. But I don't know if you recall in the beginning of the school year, we had significant gains in mathematics as a district as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Michelle?
First of all, thank you. This is wonderful. And since this is new, just in general, I have a couple of questions. One about the targets. A lot of the targets that are set are 75%.
Yes, right.
And the state sets the target's
Yes.
the same for all schools?
Yes.
Or schools
Yes.
specific? Okay, so
All
that's what the
schools
state.
have that. Yes, whether you're urban, suburban, what size doesn't matter. Size doesn't
Okay.
matter. Nothing matters.
And do you have any insight into how they set these targets?
They did a research. They used Achieve as an organization that had done significant research on what the accountability report should look like in a district so that it's not just focused on standardized tests. And so they really did do a significant research and felt very comfortable that this is a fair target.
Okay. The only other comment or question I have, I was kind of doing what Anthony was doing, was sort of looking for, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit, but I'm just curious about the, let's see, number 5, preparation for college and career readiness.
Yes.
Where that was sort of our lowest target achieving. And I'm wondering if you all feel that there could be any, I don't know about coding mistakes, but I mean, we're clearly college ready because we're meeting the target on the exams and we're meeting the graduation rate and we're 98% of target achieved on post-secondary entrance, and yet they feel that we only have 50% of the target in preparing. So it doesn't seem to make sense, and so I'm kind of wondering if there's some misalignment.
So you look at grades 11 and 12, right? So they're looking at the total population of students in those 2 grades and how many AP courses or ECE or 2 courses in the CTE route. So we have limited courses that we do offer. We don't have as many courses as other particular districts.
CTE is computer technology?
Careers and
careers. Or to work.
It's careers and technology.
Careers and technology.
Yes.
Oh, careers and technology. Or 2 workplace experiences.
Right. So we do have
I know we
students-
do some job shadowing, but that's not the same.
No. We do have students who have specialized programs, and so a workplace experience is something that's very important and relevant for those particular students, and so they are actually getting credit. They're not necessarily taking your AP, but they're getting credit because they're doing something that it's at their competency.
Can I just interject? We are working in that area. We are trying to offer at least 1 or 2 AP classes in sophomore year, so that this way the kids then, when they get to 11th and 12th, they'll already have 1 under their belts.
Would that count?
Sure.
Yes,
It'll count.
because
It's in their 4 years.
Within their 4 years, what it does is every year it looks at the current 11th and 12th graders and then looks to see how many of the courses that fit this description were taken.
During their 4 years, not
Exactly.
just in an 11 and 12.
No,
I can't
during
believe
the
we're
4
only
years.
hitting 56% of target.
Well, we're
It just doesn't
significantly higher than where we were.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not saying it's bad. It just doesn't make sense that we're 100% on target graduating and pretty much on target for post-secondary entrance. So they're getting into college. They must be ready. No?
Of course.
It doesn't seem to
But
line
they
up.
have to take two courses. So if they're taking a career in technology, they have to take a course that leads to another pathway. They're in clusters.
Right.
You can't just take random career technology courses and have them count. They have to fit a certain pathway for that particular area.
Okay.
But we are trying to encourage kids to take more AP or EC. We really are. And you can tell we've gained.
Well, when Todd comes and does his AP report, I mean, we have kids taking so many of them, taking quite a few. So that's why I'm just surprised. But
they need to have 2 in order for us to even get a credit.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Yes.
Sorry, just to clarify that, it's 2 in one subject, like AP?
No, not for AP. It's 2 for the career and technology pathway. They're clustered. Those have to match and align. But AP could be any 2
Any
AP.
subject.
Yeah, you don't need 2 AP in a particular discipline. No. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, Teresa, thank you very much. Great news.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce the next, if you wanted to.
All right, item 7 is the K-12 Physical Education Wellness Curriculum Overview. Jason Conway.
I think you're also going to be quite pleased to hear from Jason. He is here to talk about the K-12 curriculum alignment and share with you all the things that are happening with respect to physical education and wellness in our schools. Thank you.
working on it. It's hard, though. You don't have a lot of staff. It's the problem. It's the problem. 48.
Come on there.
Only 48. He's been 48 for the last couple of months. And the senior class will graduate in 48 kids. I don't know.
Put it on presentation. I'm going to get started while the slide presentation gets warmed up. A few things I'd like to start with is just I want to thank you for allowing PE to be at the board meeting. This is my second school district that I've worked at, and I've been very fortunate to be, for both districts, to be very supportive of PE and health. So I was at a conference last year, and the speaker said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be at the table. So, and I'd also like to thank the parents that are here, because the kids in this region are an amazing group of kids. As you saw from that packet that Teresa presented, I've said this before at banquets, and I'll say it again, I'm sure, but you just walk through the halls here and you see amazing things they've done. Even just after practice coming here for this earlier, walk down the hall and there's kids singing and rehearsing for a play right now. I mean, it's really impressive. And I'm a pretty competitive person, so to see the only down arrow next to physical fitness in that,
Oh, boy.
I can tell you that this year
Push-ups are on the menu.
Yeah. We've got 101 kids out of about 150 that passed all 4 components. So those numbers around 60, 70%, 80% are pretty good goals for us, and we're going to continue to work to improve that. We've had other schools from the Berkshire League contact us recently about what we do so they could get their scores up. So, I mean, it's interesting, but like I said, we'll change that blue arrow. I'd like to start by just introducing our PE team in Region 12. We have Dave Morgan, our elementary PE person at Booth, Burnham, and Washington. Heather Hurley, PE and Health at Chippewa Valley School. Jay Stewart, same at Chippewa Valley School. And myself, I'm here at Chippewa Valley School. And what I'd like to add to that slide, if you could we back up to that one? Is that right? Sorry. I just want to list a few things that the PE teachers do outside of teaching PE, because I really feel like this team, which is a wonderful team to be a part of, very supportive team, always willing to work. What they do with the kids outside of the PE classroom is pretty impressive. So I'm just going to quickly read a list. Middle school swim team, elementary fitness clubs, unified sports, high school field hockey, high school baseball, Spartan Club, senior projects, and numerous youth sports in the community. That team is pretty in touch with the student body pre-K through 12 in Region 12. So I'm very proud to be a part of it, and we're all fortunate to have Jay, Heather, and Dave as part of our team. Okay, now we can go on. Our PE philosophy, this is something that's very important to me, to have a philosophy for physical education. Unfortunately, PE programs can still get away with rolling out the ball, playing games, and kind of just hiding under the radar, and that's not how our PE team operates in this region. So we have a philosophy that's very important to us. So if we just take a minute to read that, there's some things I'd like to point out, and I'll read it out loud because it's worth reading out loud. Through our standards-based physical education program in Region 12, we hope to expose students to a variety of physical activities. Students will explore the relationship between various movement concepts and the health and skill-related components of fitness. Students will be one step closer to becoming independently fit with each grade level. When students graduate, we would like them to have the knowledge necessary to maintain a lifestyle that takes their physical, social, and mental wellness into consideration. It's long-winded a little bit. For me, it's long-winded, but it's important. Everything in there is important. There's not one thing I would take out. And what I'd really like you to kind of focus on and put back in your memory bank for a little bit is that concept of being independently fit. We need kids to
be motivated, intrinsically motivated to exercise on their own for their own well-being, not for some other extrinsic reward. So this is a goal that we try to enforce on our students. Okay. Elementary PE. We have, as you can see, if you just look at that screen, there's quite a variety in our elementary PE program. Dave Morgan does an excellent job at relating fitness and fitness concepts into every unit he teaches. His background is in athletic training, so he brings a whole different level of kinesiology, anatomy, physiology into his elementary classes, and it shows. It shows through the kids and their knowledge base as they get to us in middle school. You can scroll or advance to the next one. As you'll see in these next couple of pictures, he has an innate way of kind of incorporating academics and different modifications into his PE lessons, which when I taught elementary PE for 10 years, I used to call it exercise in disguise. These kids are getting exercise, but they don't know it because they're having so much fun, all right? And they're incorporating fitness concepts that will help them become independently fit. Okay, so we have a lot of movement exploration, a lot of just creativity through movement. And it's an amazing thing to watch. So we're fortunate to have Dave. And he also just returned from the National PE Conference, which was held in Boston. So I'm looking forward to touching base with him and finding out what came from that. It's pretty impressive that he was able to go. All right, middle school. Middle school PE. We, at Chapag here, we have 6th through 8 PE. They have PE every other day for a whole year, all 3 grades. We cover, these units are covered through 6th, 7th, and 8th, not necessarily each year. Okay, so this is an example of just our middle school curriculum, not necessarily our 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade curriculum. As you can see, 6 to 8 lessons long. Some are a little shorter, some are a little longer. The weather is a factor at times. It's a flexible curriculum in terms of how long we spend on each unit, depending on where we are. That's fortunate in our field that we can be flexible and still get everything done that we want to get done. One thing, if we could kind of hold it on this picture for a little, or that's fine too. Yeah, either way is fine. One thing that I want to point out, we start off the year with our middle school PE classes talking about community building. We define community and how that looks in a PE setting. PE is a great venue to talk about socialization, community, working together, supporting each other. One big thing we try to get across is that all members of the community can contribute in some way. We don't have to be the leading goal scorer for the team. We can contribute in another way. And we support all, and we're willing to accept defeat. Okay, we try to encourage the kids that, defeat is part of the community, so how do you respond to it? You don't run away from it, you just work together, you try to find a way to respond to it. That's just the way it goes. Game creation is another, this is an example of some creative problem solving through a game creation unit. Big focus of our creative problem solving and game creation unit is trying to link strategies and link sports together. Similar to foreign language, if you learn one foreign language, it's a lot easier to learn the second one and the third one and beyond. If you're comfortable with one sport, it's a lot easier to join another sport and to start another sport. And we're not talking about creating professionals here. We're not talking about the 1% of the 1% that goes on to professional sports. We're talking about kids maybe trying an intramural team in the future, or trying an adult league in the future for different things, just to keep people active. Okay, and you can go on to the next one, sorry. This slide, I just want to explain a little bit about this, and I'm going to talk about our facilities at the end. I'm going to save that until the end still. My wife told me not to go out of order because it'll mess me up, and I think she was 100% correct, so I'm not going to go there right now. But modified water polo in the pool. We try to remind our kids, our students, to not avoid or ignore a task because it's difficult. Water polo is an example of this because water polo is a very difficult thing. If anybody has experienced water polo, you're treading water for a long time. So we modify it. We're in the shallow end for 3 minutes, and then we try it in the deep end for 3 minutes. So we're not forcing kids to tread water in the deep end for half an hour, 45 minutes, but we're also putting that challenge in front of them and requesting that they accept that challenge. And it's nice to see because it's hard, but they survive, and then they're proud of themselves for surviving. So that slide relates to that concept pretty well. Okay, yeah, sorry. This is some middle school and high school fitness planning. We'll get into this a little bit further along in the presentation, but I like this picture because it does have the iPads, and it lets me talk about technology a little bit. We use iPads quite a bit in PE, but we're very careful not to make that a focus of our fitness planning. It's a great tool. Technology is a great tool for fitness planning. However, we feel it shouldn't be the focus. It should be a guiding factor, and then we get outside and we exercise and we work out. Now, that being said, technology is a great motivator for children, as we all know. Okay, so we can use that to our advantage. We use those iPads. We research fitness apps in 9th grade, determine what's good and what's not so good. And we use 5 or 6 right now fitness apps that are perfect for middle schoolers to come in. We have the iPad cart. Every kid gets an iPad. Every kid's got the program right in front of them. So it's a nice way to integrate technology without making it the main focus. Okay. Health education. It's becoming more and more of a wellness-oriented field. Okay, wellness meaning health, PE, all combined. Okay, for our health education, some things I want to point out, and I would like to read this one out loud. I know it's been a long night, but I feel like whatever we do for physical education, we should do for health education because they're one and the same, because they're both so important. Through health education, we hope to reflect the importance of physical, mental, and social well-being. Our program aims to link a healthy lifestyle with making positive and well-thought-out decisions. We hope to expose students to current health trends while making them aware of certain risk factors that can lead to an unhealthy lifestyle. Students will understand that the decisions they make will also have an effect on their closest family and friends. While health concepts can be addressed in other subject areas, it is more effective for students to have an opportunity to explore these topics in a more personal and detailed setting. That last statement, I just want you to just take a second and just think about that and think about how certain health topics are difficult to discuss. However, as I said earlier, just because they're difficult to discuss does not mean we ignore them. We still discuss them. And when health education is done correctly, it can create a very comfortable setting to discuss these uncomfortable topics. So Heather Hurley and Jay Stewart, they teach our health programs up here, and they do a very nice job of creating that comfortable setting. And they are able to get some interesting points across to the students, especially with regards to risk factors and the effect those risk factors have on not only the student, but those closest to the student. Okay? This is a nice slide. I like this slide because when we talk about standards, you know, I often wonder about the people that write standards for standards-based education because the standards are very confusing sometimes. And if I'm a student and I look and I say, these are my standards that I have to go by, I'm not going to know what this means. So I like how this slide kind of puts it into the terms of the student. So I won't read all of these, but I'll just pick out a couple. Number 2, applies knowledge of concepts, principles, strategies, and tactics related to movement and performance. So for a student to see this, and these are national standards as the slide states, I show that I know how to move and use a plan when I play games. Okay, that's what we're looking to see if there's any planning. Are they anticipating what's coming down the court or down the field? That's a huge part of success in athletics is the ability to anticipate and plan ahead. Number 5, recognizes the value of physical activity for health, enjoyment, challenge, self-expression, or social interaction. The response is, I know why it is important to be physically active. That sums it up right there for our students. If we can get everybody to understand that and act on it, then we've created independently fit students and individuals. Okay? Common Core in PE. I really wanted to add a few slides about this because the conception for PE is that we don't do any reading and writing or math in PE, and that ship has sailed. We do a lot of literacy, we do a lot of math work, and we make the kids write in PE. It does not take time out of our active learning time, and I'll explain what that means in a little bit. If it's done correctly, it can be done within the lesson, and it doesn't affect the outcome. It has a great response to the physical activity. It's a great setting for students who may, in the classroom, feel intimidated to do their reading and their writing and their math. It's a nice way to practice and have the students in a comfortable setting. Just a few things to point out. I won't read the whole slide. Students are constantly practicing communication and problem-solving skills, which help them prepare for their future. Okay, a big part of Common Core is being able to put things in order, plan, and plan for your future. How is what I'm doing now going to affect what I do next, tomorrow, next year, next month, whatever it is? We're able to do that in PE, in our setting, pretty easily. All right, the communication, the planning. If we give them, sometimes we'll give them instructions to a game on a piece of paper. They have to read those instructions and take it from the paper to the court, okay, as opposed to me just telling them how to play. They have to respond to that and put it together and make it happen. Okay, so that's a nice way to relate PE activities to Common Core. All right, you can go to the next. Okay, and what I want to point out is just a few examples that we do right now that relate to Common Core. Vocabulary in PE is huge, especially when we talk about fitness, relating it to fitness concepts. Target heart rate, resting heart rate, maximum heart rate. That's almost necessary for survival, to know that, to know how to find your heart, to find your pulse, to know what it means, to know how it relates to what you get out of your workout. It's important stuff, and it's vocabulary that they need to know. And it's interesting because when I was in PE class here, we didn't talk about heart rate. It wasn't part of PE curriculums back then. Things have changed a lot, and I think for the better. And it's amazing what kids know now that 8th, 9th, 10th graders didn't know even 10 years ago. Creating directions, I just gave that example. Creating fitness plans, this is a big one for us. 8th grade, we talk about the FIT principle, which is a principle related to designing a workout: frequency, intensity, time, and type of exercise. And you kind of fill in each of those sections and you've got yourself a workout. 8th grade, we introduce it. 9th grade, they create their first fitness plan. 10th grade, they create a fitness plan with more than one workout in it. So they'll create a Monday, Wednesday, Friday workout to go along with a Tuesday, Thursday workout. So, all right, I want to talk about PE of the past, present, and future. PE of the past, lines, lines, and more lines. Line up, one person goes, you wait your turn, then the next person goes. And it's not that far in the past, because I still see it. I'm involved with a lot of youth sports, so I see a lot of different youth sports practices, and I still see kids lined up, one going at a time, next person goes, and meanwhile, while that one person is going, the other 20 are waiting in line, okay? So that's PE of the past. Low ALT, active learning time. How often during a class period are the kids moving around? We shoot for 80%. 80% of the class to be movement. And most of the time, it's depending on where we are in the unit. Early on in the unit, it's right around 80. Further along in the unit, it's a little more than 80. It was designed for athletes, PE of the past. If you were athletic, you probably loved PE. If you weren't, you probably hated it. It's as simple as that. Captains, choosing teams. Everybody knows the cliche of being the last one picked. There's other ways to choose teams. That's PE of the past. Uncomfortable setting for some, very little modifications made for different ability levels. Okay. PE of the present. It's fitness, it's skill-oriented. 80% is our goal. Comfortable environment for all students, all skill levels. That's a big one because if we turn off people to exercise or to fitness, and I'm not talking athletics, okay, if we turn people off from staying fit, we're not going to achieve that independently fit person that we want. And it could be life or death in the future if they don't have the skills necessary to stay fit. Written assessments at the end of each unit. I spoke to that a little bit already with the Common Core, but this is an important one to me personally. I feel like written assessments put PE at that table. If we choose not to give written assessments, what does that say about us as a PE program? I know that there are still PE programs that don't do written assessments, and they say, well, because it takes away from our activity time, but the way we do it, it does not take away. And I think we've made huge progress in the last 3 or 4 years with the quality of the written assessments we've gotten back in our PE program. It's standards-based, as I shared already. Physical literacy, relating the activity to our bodies. Why do we do this? Okay, pretty much every kid now knows that you need to exercise. But what happens inside your body when you exercise? That's the next level that the whole country, the whole world needs to get the kids to. What's happening inside my body? Okay. Physical education of the future. And for some of this, we're already in the future. Elective-based program for high school students. We've changed the way we offer PE to high school students. Students get to choose now a team sports pathway or a personal fitness pathway. So for those students who are not comfortable in the sports setting, they can choose personal fitness now, and they can go for 9th and 10th grade, personal fitness 1 in 9th grade, personal fitness 2 in 10th grade, and be exposed to a variety of different fitness techniques, different styles of fitness, make fitness plans, create extensive fitness plans, and act on them, and then modify them. Team sports kids, for those kids that are into their team sports, that play sports, that want to learn different strategies. I go back to the example about world language and learning different languages. There are kids that excel at sports and want to learn more sports and participate in more sports. There's value to that as well. The strategy and the planning, it's helpful in all their subjects. So that would be the team sports pathway, same style, team sports 1 freshman year, team sports 2 sophomore year. PE before school. We're working towards offering a PE class before the school day starts. In my opinion, that's healthy habits right there. The day is 24 hours long. We're in school for, what, 6 hours? 6 hours, 6.5 hours. There's a lot of other hours in the day. Okay, now, not only, I'm not being selfish either. I'm not saying more PE, even though it is nice that it's more PE. But what it does during the school day is it allows kids to possibly take a double lab. It allows kids to take an AP class that might have already been filled in with PE in their schedule. And to be honest, it's a healthy habit for the future, as I said before. I mean, if we're all busy, the only time we have to exercise is usually before work or after work. And that works, after work works great until you have a family. And then that's shot. So getting used to working out before school or before work, it could prove very beneficial to the students. And then just once again, independently fit. I keep saying that, but it's important. We have to get there. Okay. This is an example of a fitness and nutrition class using the Smartboard to do a group workout. Now this particular class is an exceptional example of the work that they put in. But the Smartboard in the fitness center, I don't know how many PE programs get to say they have a Smartboard in the fitness center, Smartboard or a fitness center. So it gets used a lot. It gets used for sports after school in terms of strategy and planning, and it gets used a lot in our PE classes. And this is what I had alluded to earlier about the facilities. We are unbelievably fortunate here for a number of reasons, but one of the big reasons is having a pool that we can use for our PE classes, having a fitness center that can accommodate a class of, you know, if it's done correctly, a class of 30 kids can go in there and get a beneficial lesson done in there. A gymnasium that's large, clean, I mean, always clean. The custodial staff in this building keeps this place immaculate. The gym is spotless. The fields, the outdoor fields, I mean, it's amazing. The track, they're all just so well kept and they're all ready for us to use. I've talked to PE teachers who aren't allowed to use their tennis courts, aren't allowed to use their track. And we have access to all of it, and it's all top of the line. So we're very fortunate. The whole team, the whole PE and health team realizes how fortunate we are. The outdoor campus has allowed us to do mountain biking units, as one of the pictures in the background was a student mountain biking. They created mountain biking courses. They do snowshoeing, they do skiing, they do tennis. I mean, the possibilities are endless here for what we have. So we're very fortunate to be where we are. As a teacher and as a parent, I say every day how lucky I am to be where I am and where my kids are. How lucky I am to have my kids go to a place like this. And I tell the students when we're outside in the fall, I have them stop and just, when we go up to the JV soccer field, if you stop and just look around, it's unbelievable. So I want them to appreciate that as well. So again, thanks for your time. And again, thank you for putting us at the table for PE. It's greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Are there any questions for Jason? Greg?
I really think that you've brought PE to precisely where it needs to be. You've really not just earned a spot at the table, you've set the table here, and I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
And I want to commend you on that. Really exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anthony?
Yes. So, if I heard you correctly, you're contemplating if you play a team sport during the year, you could use that in lieu of taking PE and then fill in that. What were you saying?
What part? I'm not sure what.
You said taking team sports.
Oh, team sports is the name of the class because it focuses on team sports like volleyball, basketball, floor hockey. Yeah, it's the name of a course. It's a course we offer here right now as an elective course for high school students.
Oh.
Yeah.
In lieu of an individual track.
What's that?
In lieu of an individual track?
In lieu of personal fitness for students that aren't comfortable playing team sports. Yeah.
Anyone else? Michelle?
Thank you, Jason. That was great. And I like the two pathways. The credits would still be the same,
Right.
I'm assuming? So
Yes.
you would take 1 and 2, which is each a semester, and then they would still have a 0.5 or a semester of health?
Yes, that's correct.
So I'm wondering, and there's been a lot of talk in the state and nationally with high school reform, and PE comes up every now and then. Do you know sort of what direction that's taking, like what people are talking about?
Well, it's interesting. Next week I'm going to a conference for Connecticut PE district coordinators and leaders, and I have kind of a laundry list of questions that I want to ask with regards to PE requirements and PE time restrictions and what's required or what's recommended. So, I know that what we do here is right up to what the state standards and state recommendations recommend. So I'm curious to hear what they say as far as what they recommend for their version of PE of the future, because it is a topic that's going to come up. Anthony's question there has come up in a lot of public schools. That's a very valid question,
Yeah.
and I don't recommend it. I don't agree with it, but it's a valid question. So it's the best way to respond to that and defend that is to create a program that people want to be a part of, and by creating an incentive or an elective program, we're taking one step closer, getting one step closer to that.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Valerie?
I just want to thank you for having the kids really look around and see what they have here. because we often don't stop to smell the roses. We don't appreciate the positive. We all literally and figuratively get into the weeds of needing this and getting that, and where's our tax dollars going. But we're in a magnificent setting, and we do our best on the board, and certainly our staff does, to keep the inside and the outside in great condition. And I'm glad that you're telling the kids that, because we need a little more positive viewpoint from time to time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I understand. Thank you.
Michael.
Yes, thank you for a great presentation. One of the ideas that you brought to us that I'm particularly excited about is the possibility of the morning PE class before the school day starts. I think that has a number of pluses. The only big minus is that I can envision as a parent is trying to get my kid to get up even earlier. That's a big one.
Right,
But I would encourage you to keep pursuing that idea. I think it's wonderful. I think that if you could come back to the board with maybe some data on the number of students that would be interested in that kind of a possibility, maybe some information from parents, whether parents would support that kind of an idea, and maybe some of your own observations if you can go to some area high schools that do that.
Right.
What that looked like to you and what they said were some of the positives or the negatives of their experience. I think all that information would be invaluable to us in order to support you with the additional funds to make that a reality.
Right.
But I think it's really encouraging. We have a number of students here who are blocked out of another academic area that they would love to take, and this might give them that flexibility while maintaining their physical fitness. So I think that would be wonderful.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, Rebecca.
I really liked your approach, the whole comprehensive approach of it's just not about PE, but it's about mind, it's about body, it's about nutrition. And, I was one of those kids that had to go when it was for athletes, and I was not an athlete, and I would have preferred bamboo shoots under my nails to going. And so seeing how PE has progressed and that there won't be another generation of kids who, when they're like me, have to figure it out for themselves in their 40s, that they're going to learn that it's about this package of what you put in your body, how you treat your body, and that whole concept of if you're taking care of yourself, that's when you're going to be the best person that you can be, and in turn, that's going to feed you as an academic person as well. And so I laud your efforts, and I think it's fantastic that you're trying to make it approachable for everyone.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Greg.
One of the things that we spend a lot of time, effort, money, and attention on, especially in the facilities committee, is the swimming pool. And it's always been one of the most difficult things to handle because of the constant need for expenses. But it seems to me that this is a pretty important piece of school equipment. I mean, just how important is having the ability to have a swimming program at the PE level for you?
Well, for a lot of reasons, it's one of our most, swimming is a lifelong fitness skill. It's a skill you can do even as you get older. It's a great fitness activity. So, and it's a life-saving skill. Kids need to know how to swim, and we have an opportunity to teach kids how to swim if they don't know how to swim. And that's not as archaic as it sounds. There are still kids that don't know how to swim. But even to your point, even further, there's no unit in our curriculum that gets more of a cardiovascular endurance result than our swimming unit. Just being in the pool is work. Maneuvering through the shallow end is work. And as far as active learning time, we can have everybody in the pool, everybody doing something. And our active learning time numbers are probably closer to 85–90% of, not including changing time, when we're in the pool. So it's a great resource. I brag about having a pool all the time. I mean, there's kids that my son plays sports with that are just, they don't believe him when he says he's doing a swim unit, and they have a pool in their school. It's what has been done to the pool has made it such a better teaching environment. It's so much easier for the students to hear us in there now than it was a couple of years ago, which sounds minor, but it's in my eyes, it's major. So we appreciate all that has been done to that area immensely.
Well, that's important for us to hear, so thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Well, thanks for bringing it up.
All right, anyone else? Jason, thank you very much.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Excellent presentation. All right, before moving on to item 8, very briefly, I need to go back to item 5.4, the senior class trip. It needs to be voted on by the board. So it's a planned trip to out of state, Six Flags in Agawam, Mass., then to Loon Mountain, Lincoln, New Hampshire, dinner cruise, the World Trade Center, I assume in New York, and then Quincy Market in Boston. Okay, I'm sorry. Then Quincy Market in Boston, Mass. Is there a motion to approve the senior class trip? Michelle seconds. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, the trip is approved. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 8, budget discussion, 2017-18. Typically, what I've asked in the past is for Valerie as our treasurer and is to take us through the budget. And Valerie, if you're prepared to do that, and then we can have a discussion on it. Whether we're going to be able to finish that tonight, it's now almost 10 to 9. We'll have to see. So Valerie?
Thank you. I live for this. Yeah. But it's very important, and by background, I want you to know that the administration has invited the Finance Committee meeting group and the boards of finance and the selectmen, if they want to send a representative to our workshops, where we sit with the CO staff and the appropriate administrators and go through lots and lots of detail about what they want and what they can get. And then this goes through a series of sifting movements and pluses and minuses, additions or subtractions to what the administrators think they need and what has to be added for facilities. And then we come up with a number, and then it goes further through Bob and, of course, through Pat. And we come out with a number, and I'm glad to say that we have a 0% increase this year. We're actually down $2. And I think that's very important and says a lot about the management of our region. We're trying to be fiscally conservative. And there are a few big issues here we have to get to, and then we can get into literally the weeds with the detail. And whatever you want to do is fine, but I just want to make sure that you know about the hard work and the fact that we ask our towns to participate as much as they can. Sadly, this year we had no takers. But we try to be as transparent as possible in the budget building and approval process. I think the numbers, what I always do is, everyone knows, at these sessions, I always ask for population because that determines a lot. And for your information, Burnham School is, at this point, going to have 39 kids coming in, from 44 down to 39.
40 now. It's 40.
That's wonderful.
Another kindergarten child.
Excellent. And Booth has 71 from 85. That's a big drop. And WPS has 105 from 115. So we have 215 elementary school kids in the system, and the middle high goes from 405 up to 416. And then we have our Sherman, and we have allowed our staff to bring their children, pay tuition. So basically, we have a proposed 672 population, and that is in your budget document. And I would suggest you look at that population because it says a lot about what we're going to do. That's down from 2016, 706 kids. 706 down to 671, which is why it's great to think about ways to, and as we always have, enhance enrollment. And we will get to that, but first off, we have to get to the here and now, which is the present proposed budget. And I would like to draw your attention to, I think the first thing we should do is skip all the way to program improvements, because we've had a lot of conversation about improvements or perhaps a lack of improvement. So please go to page 9. The 700s. This is usually the meat and potatoes of the budget. And I think this is worth looking at first while we're somewhat fresh. And since we're thinking about that population of kids. And by the way, it's important, I think, the detail that we have so far for the projected 2017-2018 school year looks like 10 kids in kindergarten at Burnham, 3 kids in first grade, 8 kids in second, 3 in third grade. I believe a staff member has 1 there, so it could be 4. 7 in fourth grade, and 8 children in fifth grade.
Valerie, I'm sorry. I was doing something. Could you say that again, please? Could you go through that again?
Okay. We're going to jump to page 9, but I wanted to refresh the fact of what our population looks like because it talks a lot about what we're going to be going into.
Are you going to be reading the numbers on all the other towns too?
Sure,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
Okay, so projected kindergarten at Burnham is 10. First grade 3. Second grade 8. Third grade 3. Fourth grade 7. And fifth grade 8. For a total of 40. At Booth, 6 in kindergarten so far. 15 in first grade. 12 in second grade. 14 in third grade, 12 in fourth grade, 12 in fifth grade, total 71 so far. Those class sizes seem not unreasonable at this stage. And in Washington Primary School, 16 in kindergarten, 12 first grade, 15 second grade, 21 third grade, 21 fourth grade, 20 fifth grade, 105. So that's where we stand, and I think that's a very good framework to look at. So if you want to now jump to, please, page 9 to the objects of 700, which are the property and program improvements. We could go through this, but once again, this is kind of the core issue of the proposed budget. I mean, we could look at the 733 is capital technology, 59,000. Basically, we're going along the tech path of distribution of computers and renewing and refining Chromebooks and our desktops. In 734, capital facilities, a total of 122,770 capital facilities needs. But this would be a good time to talk about another schedule of capital needs that we can finance off of our existing accounts. So separate from that, which is part of the operating budget that I just mentioned, 122,770, we have a request for $337,500 for the middle and high school, which we will make a motion, hopefully, to pay for in the 1% account. And that'll come to you separately, and it's in your, I think it's in your packet, this grouping, or will be. It'll be a motion that we'll make probably next week.
We can give a copy. Can we make copies for the board for this, please?
And then a total of $84,500, which will be handled through the elementary school lease account. So we have 2 items that are going to be financed with existing funds that we already have, and the rest that we're talking about is through our operating budget. So then the big move is program improvement or change 750, if you find that all there, in which it has been determined, because of population, that we will be losing 2 FTE paraprofessionals district-wide, 1 FTE music teacher. 1 FTE certified teacher at this building, 1 teacher at Burnham, and 1 teacher at WPS, for a total reduction of $344,813. And then we have district-wide, some additions, 41,841 actually, for 2 different projects, Makerspace and Project Lead the Way. So basically, it's $302,972 of staff cuts, which the superintendent and staff believe match the decrease in class size. And it's up to the board to think about it, to ponder it. We've had some input. And basically what is being considered is this, at least at Burnham, which seems to be the real issue, is and this depends on the building principal, because there are different ways of doing this, but the building principal is going to be the last arbiter of how to use staff in that school. And what is proposed, at least at this point, is a K2, which will have 20 kids and 2 senior teachers. And then a 3-4, 11 kids with 1 senior teacher. And by the way, that 3-4, there are only 3 third graders. So basically it's a 4th grade class. But they don't really belong in a K2. And then a dedicated 5th grade, 8 kids, 1 teacher. So K2, 3-4 together, and then 5 standalone. And they will have 4 dedicated teachers for that school, plus whatever is required for paras and special ed. Repeat the amount of students K through 2 again? 20.
It's
21.
21 now, sorry.
in kindergarten.
21.
Changed.
So basically, it's, the ratio is about 10 to 1 at K2, obviously 11 to 1, 3, 4.
The same, we would be seeing a significant increase in our budget. If you go back then to the page we were talking about, page 9, property and program improvements, it's kind of a misnomer in a way, I think, because this is really just where we reflect all of the changes. So you wouldn't necessarily consider some of this an improvement. It's just a change one way or another, because and last year we proposed a larger change. So there's actually a decrease in this category because we're reducing more and adding less. So it's kind of a strange. The title doesn't exactly reflect what's going on, but this is the way to look at all the changes in one place. We didn't always used to do it that way, and then we were flipping through,
Right.
trying to figure out where these changes were. The only other point I wanted to make is having sat with the administrators and having them go through their budgets, they were very careful and they made very hard choices about what was needed, but I felt very confident that they were purchasing what they needed for their classrooms, the textbooks that they needed, the computers that they, we're on a replacement cycle where it may have dipped down one year in one area, language arts, for example, it may have gone up in math, and so they purchased what they needed. So I feel very comfortable with all the rest of the budget, that it reflects what is needed for our students so that they can be successful for the next year. So if we focus a lot of the conversation here on these changes, I don't want to just gloss over that, because Valerie and I spent a lot of time, and the administrators clearly and central office have spent a lot of time going through with a fine-tooth comb, talking about textbooks and
Pencils.
Well, I was thinking more of cafeteria tables, but all the things that make up the school day. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Michael?
I wish I shared your level of confidence and enthusiasm for the budget. I have a couple of concerns, and let me start with one. we're talking about some significant cuts in the staff here at Region 12. On the heels of praising the staff here at Region 12 and remarking as a board how wonderful a job they're doing, and to put this under program improvements, even though it's marked program improvement changes, and talking about reducing in force for teachers, that's significant. That hurts our community. And I hope we're not using this euphemism lightly, because I think Congress can often make something bad seem good with the name change. So we need to recognize that, first of all. I mean, we're talking about 4 people who are going to be let go, that are going to have to find jobs elsewhere. That hurts. That hurts me as a parent. That hurts the community. I'm sure it hurts our administrators. Nobody likes to say that. And I think we need to start with that reality. The second statement that I want to question is, Ms. Anderson, you said that many of these reductions in forces depend on the building principals, and I just want to correct you on that.
On the what?
You said that this budget reflects the will of the building principals, whereas
Whatever staffing changes are very specific to the final decision of the principal.
correct.
In this arrangement
But
specifically for
they're
Burnham.
given a reality that they need to deal with. They don't choose that reality. That reality comes from the superintendent's desk, and then it's presented to the administrator, and then the administrator has to the best of his or her ability, make that work.
Right.
So it's up to us to determine whether that directive is reasonable or not. That's what we're here to determine. So I just want to correct you a little bit on that. One of the questions that I have as a board member, and I know it was a concern echoed by many of the parents here, is the work, the data that's being used to make some of these decisions. That information heretofore was really not shared with me as a board member. So we have, fortunately, an instance where we were provided information as a board, and that was with the K-1-2 configuration, the multi-grade configuration at Burnham. That was relatively recent, as you all remember, within the last year or two. It was a very deliberate, thoughtful process. Stakeholders were brought in, and I include the board as one of those stakeholders. We were informed. We were invited to meetings. We were given information. We hired an outside consultant. It was not an overnight decision. It wasn't even made within a few months. It was a long, deliberate process, and it seemed to get buy-in from everyone concerned. I still think we need to continue to gather more data on that, but that seems to be going really well. So in contrast, we have this new recommendation where that seems to have been sprung, at least on me as a board member. And maybe Ms. Gora, maybe Ms. Anderson, maybe you found out a little earlier than I did since you're involved in the budget, but the first I heard of it was in the superintendent's presentation. There was never a parent meeting. There was never a meeting, as far as I know, among all the teachers. In fact, as a board, you will recall that in December, we had a presentation from Kathy Colella and the outside consultant and Teresa DeBrito to talk about the process and give us an update on it. It was a really positive presentation. At no time during that presentation did that group mention the idea that might even be floating around there that we would be looking at not only replicating that process in the lower elementary grades, but in the upper elementary grades at Burnham as well. If there was a concern about that very small cohort, we're specifically talking about grade 3, which I believe, when you were giving us the numbers, has 3 students in it. I'm not saying that that might not have been a concern and an ongoing concern, but I wish that concern had been articulated to the board. on a number of instances. And I wish ideas had been floated out there about what we can do about that, rather than for the first time hearing it in the budget presentation. It seems like it was a rushed decision. It doesn't seem to be based on fact or research or deliberation or collaboration. And I hope I'm wrong about that, but that's the information that I'm getting right now.
Well, if I might, I know that there have been a lot of collaboration with the building principal, with some experts in the field to develop the K2. Now remember, we have 4 kids in that 2nd grade right now, one of which is a tuitioned-in staff member's child. So only 3 dedicated Burnham kids in that classroom, and they have their own teacher. The point is, this is rolling, and it has been discussed. The original presentation was to have a K2 3-5. We're suggesting maybe let the 5th grade stand alone. It's about population. And in the meantime, and there has been a lot of conversation about this within the school, I'm not saying broadly in the neighborhood, but how to affect the K2 and how to continue what is a decline. And also, the timing is, we're sitting here in March. Hopefully we'll get this budget passed the very, very beginning of May. We have time for the teachers, the master teachers, to prepare and to prepare our parents and children. And then we will hopefully get some kind of program going. This idea of tuition, lowering tuition, is exciting to me. This could be just temporary.
That is,
I can't
that's
say
not
that.
if we can go back to the transcript of our December meeting if you really wanted to, but my memory isn't that faulty just yet. And I distinctly remember that the presentation was focused on a K-1-2 configuration, and that the research that they had done specifically said that combining grades in the lower elementary grades is often easier in terms of curriculum and more problematic as you move up grade level. Now, I could be wrong about that.
We have a 3rd grade with 3 children. So where does this cut happen?
I am not suggesting that is a surprise to me or a surprise to anyone else on this board. How could it be when that grade, those 3 children, started at the kindergarten level, which is why we started with the idea of a K-1-2 configuration in the first place? What I am saying is that information, that problem was never directly addressed. In fact, one person, I can't remember who on the board, asked the consultant about what are the possibilities of doing this in the 3, 4, 5 grade level, and I believe her response was, that is something we might need to look at after proper planning, and maybe in a year from now, we could come back to you with more information on that. I don't believe her answer was, certainly we can do it at the drop of a hat. We can do it in a month. Just let us know if you want us to do that. I guess the other question I had for you, Ms. Anderson, because before you were talking about the possibility of, possibly taking that small Burnham cohort and bringing it to another school like Booth. And you said that based on the recent lawsuit that could never happen. And I'm wondering, is that something specific you got information from the board's attorney that said that could never happen as a possibility? As a board, we could never look at that?
Well, the problem is because of the original regional document, which has been reinforced by that successful lawsuit, is that we can't mandate or assign. We must always have a K-5 in each of our 3 elementary schools, even if no one is attending a 3rd grade.
I'll say it again.
So it has been suggested to these
specific,
parents.
though, a specific question that you asked the board attorney.
I didn't.
Could we ever take a cohort of children that is very small and temporarily assign them to another elementary school, as has been done in the past
That was asked specifically and answered specifically.
by the board attorney.
Yeah,
And you have that in writing.
it's coming your way. And it's a shame. It's perfect common sense to do that, but that's a problem. And unfortunately, our hands are tied by a regional document. That would be wonderful for the children. Let's not forget that. These 3 kids sitting there, wonderful for their interaction. But we cannot do it. The parents can volunteer. We can entice the parents. Our superintendent has tried to show that joining Roxbury would be really good for their kids, and we would provide transportation, but it has to be voluntary. And if they don't want to do it, then we're faced with 3 kids that we have to designate a 3rd grade. That's all. I mean, our hands are tied, rock and a hard place. Jen?
And I'm asking this question just because I'm sitting here feeling guilty because I think that I dropped the ball by not asking about those 3 students before. But I think we all did. You know, as we all sit here talking about these 3 3rd graders, where were we having this discussion in December knowing this, and yet here we are sitting here surprised that this is a conversation that we're having. So I, for one, dropped the ball. I think we all did, because here we are sitting here discussing these 3. And I'm listening earlier to, and forgive me, I'm saying Jeremy, I should be saying your last name, but I'm not. What he said before, and he's right, what's the best education for these 3 students? And that's really what I'm struggling with right now. Because we should have asked the question, even though it wasn't presented. Parents should have asked the question. PTO members should have. We should have all been asking that question about these 3 students months ago, and we didn't. So now we're here and we're asking, what are we going to do about these 3? So for me, educationally, what is the best for these 3 3rd graders? Bottom line. And I genuinely am asking that question. I'd like to hear from everybody what that solution is, because I don't know if having these 3 3rd graders alone in a class is what's best for them, but I really genuinely, I don't know if having them with 5th graders is either. So I'm really asking the question of everybody to seriously bring to the table something that can help them now, because quite frankly, this conversation by everybody should have happened earlier.
Jen, if I may, I asked the question in December.
And I did too.
Why the grades couldn't be combined. So it shouldn't be a surprise.
I'm not just even
And
saying combined.
if
I'm
I may.
saying any solution, Jim.
Okay, but you said it was never asked. It was asked.
By
I
me, it
asked.
wasn't.
I'm sorry?
By a lot of us, it wasn't. We
Okay,
didn't
you said-
address it back in December.
You said none of us did. I asked the
Okay,
question in
duly noted.
December. And you keep saying, well, it's been said by the parents and some of the parents tonight, and now just by you, 3rd graders shouldn't be with 5th graders. My understanding is that's not the proposal.
That's not the proposal.
The proposal is K1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 standalone.
Unless the building
That's my
principal
understanding.
thinks it should be.
But what I am saying, Jim, is that it's a conversation that we're having late in the game. And so what I am saying is, okay, fine, 3rd, 4th graders, whatever this decision is, I'd like to hear what the other options are, because we're in this now. So I genuinely am looking for some suggestion. If it's not bringing them to Booth, because I don't know if I know in my heart, having 3 of them alone in one classroom, I don't think is the best for them. So I'm genuinely asking for other solutions.
Michelle?
I just wanted to say 2 things. First, to go back to what Michael had originally said, I think maybe you misunderstood or I didn't make it clear. When I was talking about the rest of the budget, I was talking about the rest of the budget that Valerie and I sat with the administrators and went through the supply. There, if you look, there are a lot of categories. We talked about electricity and heating and textbooks and everything. And I said that we went through all that so that the board can focus on the changes page. So I just want you to say.
So everything except for the reduction in FTE.
Right. Well, we looked at this too, but I'm not saying, what I was saying is we've looked through everything else. And I feel confident that the board can focus the attention on the changes page because everything else is in order. So maybe I didn't explain that correctly.
And if I might, it's my intention, if the board wants to, absolutely, as we always have, go through each object code, 100, 200, 300, and go into as much detail with the supplementary information that we all know and love, and get into the numbers as much as you want. The reason why I started here is because it's the hot button issue. It's of great concern to our parents, and it's something that we have to address, and we're not going to not address it and put it off, so that this time next year it's not a big surprise either. It's a continuing problem. It will be a continuing problem, and it has to be addressed until and unless we can start encouraging more kids to tuition in, which I think is a great idea, but we're not there yet. And I hope to continue conversations in the Finance Committee to begin with, and then, of course, with the board to do that. It's a great idea that Carolyn came up with. It's rather draconian, so we have to get selectmen involved. We'll go through the detail if you want, but yes, we're concentrating on these big changes. And Greg, did you want to say anything first? And then Alan?
Well, I just had a comment. Can I borrow your mic?
Please.
I guess the thing I'm struggling with on this, I mean, and I have a couple of questions about the other FTE reductions I'm going to put off for a moment because we seem to be on this one FTE. I guess the thing I'm struggling with is I don't understand after last year's three-night root canal, why we waited until the bloody budget to sit here and have this discussion. I don't understand why all the educational discussion that needed to go on, all the interaction with parents, all of the meetings that had to happen to get us to K2, why that didn't take place to get us to either 3-4-5 or 3-4/N5. I don't understand why that didn't take place. It's not necessarily incumbent on whether or not a particular member of the board stood up and asked the question. The question is, why, having seen what we went through the first time, did we decide to rinse and repeat and go through the same thing again? That's inexcusable, it's wrong, it shouldn't have been done, and frankly, I'm not standing here saying now let's point fingers, but what I am standing here saying is that there's no bloody reason that we should be sitting here tonight having this discussion at this tenor and with this level after having been through it once before. Do we not learn anything? If our children came after year one test to the next test that year and had learned nothing from the first test, good God, we wouldn't be having the level of performance that was described tonight. This is an utter failure on the part of this administration to get its priorities together and to recognize what has to be done in order to move from A to B. That group of three was there a year before. That group of three has been there for several years, and it didn't just pop out of the woodwork, and this is not the time to be having this discussion. This discussion should have been had before, and I'm apoplectic that we are sitting here having it now. And not only that, but we're having it where we can't even get to talk about the other reductions here that are, I think, critical and haven't been explained, and I think need to be explained. And I just think this was the wrong way to handle it.
I would like to respond to that because I can give a little history. Last year, when the board, first let me say this, every time that I present a superintendent's budget, it's the best budget that I can present. Okay, there's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes. So last year when we presented the budget, there was a lot of, and the other thing is, and I've spoken to a couple of board members about this, I think in my eyes, it's inappropriate for the superintendent to go around and talk about their budget in the community before the board gets the budget, okay? Because I just think that's inappropriate. The superintendent presents the budget to the Board of Education, and that's how I was trained. So that's the first thing. Last year, when the board decided to add a teacher back to Burnham, there was a lot of discussion, and I went this weekend and I watched that board meeting again, and I think some of us should, as a reminder. It was clearly said that this is a one-year time to make plans. I had a lot of conversations with the Warren superintendent. We visited Warren, and we worked for one time. We invited parents and community members to come to hear their consultant in Ed Advance in Danbury. She did a very nice job. People were not happy with her. We had another consultant contact us. I decided, because I thought it was best for Burnham, the parents, and the community, to take myself out of the discussion, because I felt that I'm a lightning rod for some people, and I didn't want it to be about me and my decisions and my inability to lead in a positive manner. So I did that, and I gave it to 2 of the staff people. I thought I made it clear, and maybe I didn't, that the problem that we were having was in grades 2 and 3. And I thought I made it clear that not only was it a social, emotional, and educational issue for kids, it was also a budgetary issue, and a staff member needed to be reduced at that school. I went to Burnham's PTO in September. The board members were invited. I was not welcomed with open arms. I tried to explain to them that I was putting it in their hands to plan for the following year. Left that meeting, put it in people's hands. In December, when I knew presentations were going to be made, I heard about the K-1-2. I asked about 3 and 4, and I was told they needed another year. So at that point, I knew that I was between my own rock and a hard place because you all know why. So that's where we are. So when I present my budget, I take advice from everybody. I'm not just the superintendent of one school. I'm the superintendent of 4 schools. And I turn down requests for staff members in other schools that have a greater need, because I'm trying to present a budget that's efficient and effective, that allows us to have the best academic programs for kids, but also is mindful of the fact that last year our budget only passed in 1 town, even though it was negative 0.23. I'm trying to lead so that the budget passes so we can move forward and hopefully become the 20th agri-science program in the state. That is the history and the understanding of my leadership. If it is a downfall, I apologize, but the original budget, when it was put in front of me, was up almost 6%. Is that what I'm supposed to do? Present a budget of 6% because everybody wants something and needs something? I don't know. That's not how I run the budget process from my office. And the other thing I just want to say, we start the budget process the beginning of December. Everyone is invited to every meeting. Everyone knows. No one comes. No one comes. So let's not say it's March, we're just hearing about things. We're not just hearing about things. In my eyes, as the educational leader, it is the middle of March. I have told Mrs. Colella that in my budget, I'm giving you 4 certified teachers for classroom. You tell me how you want to run it. I never said to her 3, 4, 5. I never said 3, 4, and 5. I did check to see if those 3 families wanted to go to Booth Free. We made sure we could provide transportation, which we can. I think it's a great alternative to move them over there for now. They'll have a great education over there. But I heard that they don't want to do that at this point. They have to go and volunteer. So, you know, the reason we're discussing it now is because no one wants to make hard decisions. That's why we're discussing it. So I'm telling you, I made a hard decision, but I am also fine if you want to put people back. That's fine. But we have to pass the budget. The budget has to pass. And last year it only passed in Roxbury. And that's really my point of view. And I hope I'm not disrespectful. I don't mean to be. I just want you to understand it from my seat here.
And might I add, before you have an opportunity, is that we get this information about the demographic studies in October. October 1 is our date to find out what the populations look like in each school and each grade. It's up to us also to be informed. I know I'm looking at these numbers a lot. We question these numbers throughout our meetings, and it doesn't have to be a formal presentation to know. And also, more importantly, a lot of times we don't know until just about this time of year what is our prospective kid count. So, we have to deal with the reality here. Another thing is about parity. All 3 schools should be treated alike. What are we supposed to do? Add 3, 4, 5 new staff members? Take a look at Washington Primary. It has 21 kids in 2 different classes. They are fine. They have coverage, but now we're supposed to have a dedicated teacher for 3 kids, 7 kids in one school only? It doesn't make sense. I trust our administrator to use the talent of these teachers appropriately. Now, Alan? Michael, and you can call me Valerie, by the way.
Thank you.
Miss Anderson, my husband will be pleased.
I was listening, Dr. Cosentino, when you were talking about your thinking on the budget, and what I'm still stuck on is not necessarily the decision, but the process. You mentioned that in that December meeting where we had the consultant, Kathy Colello and Teresa DeBrito, present to the board, you just said just now that you had your own concerns about that that third grade cohort being very small. Yet it seems that that personal concern that you had was not communicated to the presenters that the board heard. And if you had communicated that concern to them privately, that was publicly never mentioned to us by the presenters. We can go back to the presentation. They did not spend a lot of time on the research and the data on upper grade, multi-grade configuration. They just did not do that.
I understand, because they need more time. In their eyes, they need more time. So what I'm saying is that we have a difference of opinion. I have people, and everybody is working hard and doing the best they can. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. They feel they need more time to plan a 3-4 class with 11 kids. I feel I have a fiduciary duty to these towns, the taxpayers, this board, plus to those children, because I do not think 3 boys in a class is a healthy population or academic setting. And I think with the staff we have, which is fabulous, you see them all the time, they're fabulous staff, that we should be able, with the help of the community and the parents and the board, plan an outstanding program for whatever configuration they decide from now, March 20th, to when school opens, August 20th. That's what I'm saying. In 6 months, we can do it. We can do it with professional development now. We can do it with curriculum writing. We can do it with visits to other school systems that have combined classes. Morris does, or Warren does. They have combined classes, that we can do this. Okay? I have the utmost faith that we can do this and make this a lighthouse program for Burnham until the kids start coming back. But I'm also fine if the board wants to put the teacher back. But I don't want, I have to respect, and I'm trying to, respect my administrators. We had discussions. They know where I stand. I'm not going to go to schools and sit with anybody and tell them about this is going to be my budget before I present it to the board. I don't think that's appropriate. And if I'm wrong in that, I would like a discussion, because I need to understand that myself. Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should go to everybody and say, I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about this.
I don't know. I do that with the finance board. I do that with the people who come to our meetings. I do that with the board chair. And I do it with the administrators and the teachers. I don't know.
Thanks. Alan?
Yeah, I want to try to do this concisely because I tend to not. But first of all, I want to thank Pat for what you said, not this time but before, this too, but the way you kind of spelled out your timeline and your work. And I think probably what was, the painful part was taking yourself out of it, which I think was a really strong thing that you did as we planned for this last year. But what I'm confused about, which I think might answer a little bit what Jen was saying too, is a lot of this is being presented as because of the population. Because of the population, we have to do this, we have to make this cut. And a lot of this has to do with, seeing that a cut is necessary because of this small class. And I think it seems as if the first impetus or the first regard is not the education of the kids, it's the population and the budget cut. And I think when we do these things with planning, we plan for the education of the kids, and then we see if a budget cut is necessary. And I think that, and it probably would, if from what you're saying, it probably would end up that way. If we did all the planning and the research and the process, we'd probably go, you know what, we combine 3 and 4, and guess what? We'd end up cutting a teacher that way who's no longer necessary because we're not going to have a teacher for 3 kids. And I think what Jen was saying was that she's feeling that we're where we were last year, where we see it as a population issue and a budget issue first, and not an in-depth regard for the actual viability of that small social group first. And I think also what you were saying about the plan is that, and I'm glad that you went back to remark on the tape from last year's version of this particular meeting, where we all said we're going to give you a year to make plans. And plans were made because the issue was K2. But I think what Greg is bristling at is that we're back here in the same sensation again. It's a deja vu situation because some of that year was used to make plans for K2, but at the point where you were concerned, Dr. Costantino, where the emphasis had not been put on planning for 3-4, that was the point where you should have said more planning. And as you pointed out, when maybe Jim mentioned it or you mentioned it in that meeting, the administrators and the consultant said, well, we would need another year, we'd need to do more planning. In which case you say, well, start now. As opposed to, okay, well, we won't talk about it until budget time so we can go through this deja vu process. So I think that's the issue, is that, I mean, we can talk about the idea of your sensation that it's inappropriate to talk about the budget in advance. I mean, there might be a code or understanding about that I don't know because I didn't go to superintendent school. But maybe that has to do more with allocation of funds and people vying for things than it has to do with these real hot topics that the more consensus and the more buy-in and the more planning you have, the better, so that you do disclose that as early and as advanced as you can. If this was something that was eating away at you back in December, maybe that's the time to say, look, we need to pull together the parents, the administrators, the teachers, the community, the consultants, and work on this 3-4 sooner rather than later. I don't think that is a violation of a budget confidence, in as much as, perhaps dealing with materials or who's getting how many pencils or something might be something you need to hold closer to your vest based on what your training and experience is as a superintendent. So in short, I think the issue is that we have lost the trust of parents that we're not just repeating ourselves. And that's what we need to try to see what we can do to rectify right now. And also the people, like the way I feel about this and the way which Jen was mentioning, in our own hearts, that we're focused on the best education for these 3 kids as opposed to just how to make the numbers work.
I disagree completely with that, because I think that the can kicking has got to stop. If everyone wants to memorize these numbers, let's just take a good look now, so next year we're not all excited and, it's new to us. This is a trend that's been sustained for some good long time. We have gone from 931 kids in this school in 2010 to 671. We have lost about 25 kids in the last year alone. And these things just happen. Some kids move out, some kids move out. Now we know the numbers, we see the trend clearly. There is no doubt in my mind, just like we have one section of grade in WPS, the first time we've ever had that. We have had, Alan, multiple sections of grades in WPS. Now we have one section per losing a teacher. We do have classes of 20. They could be split, but that would not necessarily be appropriate. These are new times. We see them. We've seen these numbers for at least 2 or 3 years and going beyond. If we don't want to take the time to educate ourselves, then shame on us. We shouldn't be on the board. Here it is. This is the way it goes. And if there's a huge influx, yippee, it'll be a wonderful surprise, and we will definitely accommodate that increase in kids. But don't say this is news to me each and every budget time. Also, we don't know firmly what the numbers are until about this time. So here it is. Kick the can, do more studies, then what? Where's your parity with the other 2 schools? You have 3 kids in a class with a teacher? Is that fair? Is that right? Is that appropriate? It isn't. So either you make the hard decisions now, or you just keep buying off a particular school or a particular town. We have to represent the entirety of the region, and that actually includes taxpayers. And if we're going to sell a budget that shows such a big decrease in student population, we're going to be sitting here until June trying to pass a budget. And it's not just about passing a budget, it's our fiduciary responsibility as well as our responsibility to students. So let's everyone memorize the numbers. We're not going to do this again. The numbers are going down. I've said for a while it's going to be a one-room schoolhouse. And guess what? It will be, because the population doesn't warrant 5 grades with 5 dedicated teachers. Oh my God, I wish it would. So don't smirk. Let's not play Groundhog Day. Let's just look at reality.
Valerie, I'm
be
just
there.
smirking because I don't think you understood or heard. I mean, maybe I don't think you heard anything that I said, and that's the problem.
I have heard and I've processed. Michelle?
Well, I just wanted to say that I did hear you, and I think you know me well enough to know that if I thought 3 students in a classroom was the right thing educationally, I'd fight for it tooth and nail, and I would find cuts somewhere else. I really would. I don't think it's the best environment for students. I just don't. But I'm not going to pretend that I have the answers, and this is where I agree with Pat in that I think 6 months is enough time for the staff in Burnham who have done a fabulous job and have already done so much research on putting grades together, have been running a K1 for 2 years or 3 years, 2 or 3 years, and have done a lot of research on a K2. I think that they will figure out the best way to service the needs of those students in whatever configuration. But I also share your frustration, and I think we should maybe rethink how this ties in with budget. Because in that gap, we did as a board in that December presentation, you know, the staff was given a problem to solve, which was this next year's 3rd grade, this very small class. And their solution didn't solve it. And we asked about it, but we didn't press very much. You know, people said, well, what about it? I said, well, we need to look at that more. And at that point, I think we were all sort of stunned. We were just like, well, we should have pressed harder in December. We should have said, well, no, but that was the problem you were getting. I mean, it's kind of interesting when you're given a problem and you come back with an answer that answers something else. But then there was that gap in January and February where we should have really been talking about the educational piece, and we didn't. I mean, the thing is, that's 4 meetings. We got snowed out. We had a public info session. I mean, it's not okay, but it's not it's not that long ago, but we should have been having a conversation. And we should have probably bumped some stuff off our agenda to say, no, wait, we really need to look at this class because something needs to happen with them. And there's maybe something we haven't thought about. I've been thinking about, if they, well, we don't need to go into the details, but I've thought about them, doing specials with the 2s so that the 4s are alone sometimes, and then 3s doing, that we have qualified people to figure that out. They've put together a beautiful schedule we all got in December for the K1, 2, on how to share that time so they have alone time and together time. And whether it's, whatever configuration, they will, I know they will figure out how to meet the needs of those students. And I truly think that they will be better served together with somebody. And so I'll let the staff figure that out, because 3 alone is just not right. I mean, think about sitting in a class of 3 all the way up to middle school and then coming up here. That's shocking. I mean, that's basically homeschooling, and that is not what we do. That is not what we're about. So I do think 6 months is enough time to figure this out. I do, however, wish we'd been having this conversation before and not tied it to budget. Not at all. Just said, you know what do we do? What's the right thing? And we didn't. So here we are.
I just want to add that Carolyn brought in a great suggestion, which got us talking about tuitioning in more aggressively in February, something we're going to consider. So, we have been thinking about these issues for a while. Rebecca?
So I'm not sure what meetings I've been attending, but I thought that we were in the process of making the difficult decisions. I thought we were in the process of making the hard decisions because we have been combining classes in Burnham. And I thought that that was going to be the place where we were figuring it out to show the rest of the region how we could make it work. And the reason that I'm saying it that way is because I think that we're all very aware of the numbers, and I don't think it's about us memorizing the numbers. I think it's about the fact that we are trying to solve the problem, but we're trying to do it in a way that is not only fiscally responsible, but educationally responsible. And when we had the presentation in December and it was focused on K2, again, maybe I'm an idiot, but it made complete sense to me because we were focused on taking that K1 that had been a good success, everything that we'd heard, they've been doing a great job, and we were going to expand to a K2 based on working with the consultant. It seemed to make sense. The lower grades, the younger kids are easier to combine because the curriculum is not as robust, it's not as complex. Made total sense to me. And when the question was asked by Jim about those 3, and it is 4 if that other child is allowed to stay in there, and I don't see why they wouldn't be. And they said, we have to keep working on it again. That made complete sense to me because we're trying something with the K2, we got to get that squared away before we go to the more complex levels. So to be quite honest, I thought that we were on target. I thought that we were working on solving the problem. I thought that we were doing it in a reasonable way. I thought that we had involved the community. I thought it was great that we had come so far from last spring. And what frustrates me is that when we remove a teacher from the upper grades in Burnham, what we've done now is we've completely changed the nature of Burnham as a school. Because this year we had K1, and then everybody else was in a traditional classroom environment. Well, now we've spent the last number of months selling a K2 configuration, and now out of nowhere, we're going to start combining in the upper level as well. So initially, there were conversations that it would be 2 classrooms. So now it's 3 instead of 2, but we've changed the nature of the school. And so while I'm not dismissing concerns about Boothfree or Washington, we are changing the entire primary school. We are changing the way it functions. I also have concerns about, when you talk about facilities, you talk about that there is a certain baseline that is required in order to keep the lights on. And it doesn't matter the population. There's a point where you have to spend a certain amount of money to keep the lights on. And I did not get an educational argument that by removing that one more teacher, because we're working with such small numbers, that we are going to be keeping the educational lights on? What is removing one more full-time person from that very small school going to do, going to stress to the other remaining people that are in there? I don't know if it's a problem or not, but that's something that, in terms of education, we should have all those answers before we talk about it fiscally. And speaking of fiscally, I said this to Pat before when we were finishing up the the facilities meeting. With the state in the situation that it's in, I respect that she brought in a flat budget and that she's trying to be fiscally responsible in a very difficult time. Having said that, she also made the point that the budget didn't pass when it was negative. And I think that we had a member of our audience say, it doesn't necessarily fail because it's an increase. We have to keep in mind that we are very fortunate that we have a population that considers education to be very, very important, and they're incredibly supportive of us. And to that end, we want to make strong educational and fiscal decisions. And that's why I was behind the K2. That's why I'm not okay with something that feels so fast on the heels of something that was done so well. I think that's it for the moment.
Greg?
Oh, sorry.
I guess the problem is we're confusing two things here. We're confusing, and maybe I didn't make it clear enough when I said it before, but we're focusing on this is because of the budget timing, and that's why we're focusing on it now. But it's not primarily a budget issue. It's an educational issue. And if it's your child or your children in the school, you're looking at this in terms of how it affects them. And therefore, the ramp time to going from we've got a problem, we need to address it, to this is the method of addressing it. In order to have public confidence and buy-in, we've got to do more than just trot it out at budget time and say, well, we couldn't talk about the budget before now. No, we couldn't talk about the budget before now. I agree with the superintendent. But what we could talk about is, honestly, how are we going to deal with the numbers that are in this school? And that's the honest discussion that should have been had a long time ago. Now, some of us talked about it. Back in the days when we were talking about consolidating the elementary schools, I know I, for one, voiced the concern that if we didn't do something then, we were going to get to the point where Burnham was eventually going to become a one-room schoolhouse, and even Roxbury was probably going to see fewer than 6 classes in that building. And this is precisely what I feared would occur if we didn't do something at that point. But we didn't. That decision's passed. I'm not relitigating it. But what I'm saying is that we have a duty to make it communicated to every parent in the system exactly what direction it's heading and how it's going to have to get there. When we bring in a group to look at K2, we better also have someone standing there that knows how to deal with 3, 4, and 5. And I think that the mistake that we made, perhaps, was in letting it go another year. But we didn't have a choice because we didn't start it soon enough. We probably should have started it even before then because we saw these small classes coming. Well, now we're there. And I don't think the people that are here tonight begrudge this decision on an economic basis. What they're saying is you've sprung it on us. And we needed to hear about this earlier, and we needed to figure out whether it made sense. We needed to agree with you and have buy-in that it makes sense. I agree. I'm not sure I want to see 3 children or even 4 in a single classroom. I'm not sure that makes a lick of sense educationally from everything I've heard from the professionals we hire to the consultants that have been brought in. But it's not just about how many teachers can we have in the building on an economic basis. It's not just about how many teachers should teach the kids. It's how do you bring along the constituency out there, that is the parents of these children, into understanding why this decision is being made and why it's necessary. And I think we have pretty much left that mess on the field, and now we're going to have to move forward and try to figure out how we get there. But it's been apparent for a long time that we had 3 kids in the classroom, and we absolutely should have made it plain to parents that that decision was going to have to be addressed, and that was probably going to mean a 3-4. Now, I know that it's not always politic to have that discussion when people haven't bought into a K2. But there lies the problem. We have to be honest with people and tell them that this is a real nightmare situation in trying to figure out how best to educate the children in a school with so few. And therefore, we need to get honest and we need to talk about it from day one, that this is where we're going and this is where we have to go. It's not a budget issue. If we had to afford an extra teacher, we would. For me, it's an educational issue. How do you educate those 3 or 4 kids? And that's where I think we have to go.
Can I just real quickly, why don't we do something really different and problem solve? If we know that we have a K2 and we've bought into that and we're all prepared for that, fine. We have a standalone 5th grade, 8 kids, teacher, fine. So now what we're left with is the dilemma of the 3-4. We have, once again, the 3 or perhaps 4. That's a staff member. That staff member can have that child, at any of the other schools, but we hope to keep in there, her there, whomever. And we have 7 4th graders. So we've got 11 kids. So do we call that a dedicated 4? Do we get a teacher, go back and put in another teacher for that very, very small 3rd grade class? We're basically talking about combining a 3-4, of which there are only 4 children that are in 3rd grade. Is that the worst thing we can do? So let's just pull back a little bit and see where our resources will take us. And if we could encourage the parents of those 3rd graders to please sweetly join Booth, it'd be wonderful. We can't force them by the document that we all signed when we regionalized. That's it. So basically, let's concentrate on that one classroom dilemma. Alan.
But I think Valerie, you're totally seeing the point here of this. But to answer what Michelle said, it's not as if I don't think anybody's advocating for supporting this class of 4 all by itself, because there is that. You keep saying 3, but there's a 4th person. So it's a matter of the solution, and it's a lot better, as Greg said, to have the solution and then have it that everyone is a part of, and then have any kind of budgetary reaction. The problem is that you really like seeing the plans like we saw for the K-12, the curriculum, the schedule, the work that went into it, the background, the evidence of research, the buy-in. You like to see that before you go, okay, let's do that. What we're doing now is we are going, let's do this, and we trust them to get this figured out in the next 6 months. And unfortunately, that's saying we're going to do this without a plan. And there's no reason not to trust anybody for this. But the idea is it causes a lot of stress in the community and amongst the parents to have us make a choice before the plan. And that is what I'm talking about, is the whole issue here. And I think that's the same thing that Greg is saying. And I'm not, if we end up with a one-room schoolhouse and we plan for it, we could have the best modern 21st century one-room schoolhouse that makes everyone forget what they were like in the 1700s, the 1800s. And the whole paradigm will change for the concept of that. So I'm not even saying that we have to be bound by anything. I'm just saying that when we embark on something, we have to have the plan first before the board votes on it, not the other way around, because all it does is scare people. Because if we had this plan in place, and we were going to do this today, and it had a budgetary impact, then you wouldn't have parents going, oh my God, what are we doing? They would know what we're doing. And if there are parents thinking of moving into Bridgewater, they wouldn't be going, what the heck are we going to do? What's it like? And they go, I don't know, don't move here, it's going to be bad. They would go, don't worry, there's a plan, it's going to be great, my kids are going to be a part of it. And there's all that confidence and participation in this, which we forsake when we do it this way. And I think that's what the issue is. And if we go ahead, if we go ahead and keep a cut, more than likely, there will be a plan. But when we do the cut in advance, we're saying, come hell or high water, there's going to be a cut. Let's hope that plan works. And that's what I just want to make everyone aware of, is that kind of backwardness is what's causing so much stress on this board and in the public.
And if I might, there was a misconception that we were going to do a K2, 3, 5. And that's not necessarily what's being discussed, and frankly, K2, 3, 4, 5 makes sense. Once again, I mean, what we could do is say to the administrators, we want you to present, say, at our next meeting, how is this going to be affected in steps by September, and we see this, and we can make our vote on the budget and hold their feet to the fire. As I have no doubt they can do a wonderful job of telling us those steps. And Michael.
So we've been talking about planning, and I think that's something we seriously need to do. I agree with you. I think that we should look at a number of different options and look at what the pros and cons would be of the different options. That part of the equation I'm not getting, and I would feel much more comfortable as a board member and as a parent if I had that information. Right now, we're operating in a vacuum where we're saying, yes, we've studied K1-2 combinations extensively, and we feel comfortable with that, but we're just going to trust that it's going to work if we combine 3 and 4. We don't know. We don't have a lot of information about it. We haven't really studied that extensively, but we'll get to it over the summer, and hopefully it'll all gel. But as many of the parents are saying, their students have 1 year in 3rd grade. They have 1 year in 4th grade. They don't get to repeat that. And so I know one of the concerns from the board would be what would be the ramifications educationally for those 3 students if they were in a class. How would Kathy Colello handle that? You know, would she keep them in isolation with a single teacher, never to see another student? I don't think so. I have a feeling she would have a plan for that. I would love to hear what that plan would be and what she would see the strengths of those plans and maybe some of the weaknesses of that plan. Then I would also love to hear about what that configuration for 3-4 might look like and what the strengths of that would be, what the weaknesses of that might be. I want to go back to another point that you made earlier about equity when we're thinking about the 3 elementary schools. You know, if we as a board are encouraged by what's happening at Burnham, yet we're also trying to be fiscally responsible, why shouldn't we be looking at combining the K1 Booth class? It's a class of 6 and 15. That would be a class of 21 in many elementary schools. That's a very reasonable size class. Those students would have then the same experience that many of the students at Burnham would have before they move up to Chippewa. And so if we as a board are very concerned about that 0% budget, that might be another place we could be looking at combining.
Michael,
I'm not saying that we should do that. I'm just saying that that's something we should be looking at.
If I may?
Go ahead, Jim. Sorry, Michelle.
Booth free and K is 6 people, 1st grade is 15, that's 21. And you're talking about perhaps combining them with 1 teacher. Right now in Burnham is K1-2 is 21 with 2 teachers. So how is that equity?
If you're just looking at the number, a class of 6, as we've determined in the past, is a red flag. So if that is a red flag, then shouldn't we be looking at combining? If you also are interested in statistics, actually Booth had the biggest percentage decline of the 3 elementary schools. It's just a fact. Just look at the numbers. I know Valerie was talking about the numbers before. Look at the numbers.
But you can't deny
Booth
that
had the
we have
biggest
15,
I'm looking at the
12,
class
14,
sizes.
12, 12.
If
The
we're
class
also,
sizes are kind of
I'm
stable.
just saying if we're looking at the numbers,
Agreed.
then that's something we should be looking at.
Sure.
Speaking of numbers,
21, 21, 21.
we're looking at a fairly dramatic drop in student population. Should we be looking at cutting the administrative staff? There hasn't been any talk about that at the board level of reducing administrators in commensurate. It's not something I want to do or I'm looking to do or think that we should do. I'm just saying that if we want to be equitable, we should be looking at all the options if our goal is a 0% budget.
Agreed. Michelle?
I just wanted to say that if we start planning now, or the administrators start planning now for whatever it is that they want to do with the 3, the 4, the 5, however they want to, then we have 6 months and we have time. If we leave the budget as it is and the budget goes down, we give ourselves less planning time. So I don't like to necessarily be in this situation, although I do feel that the students, the students who will be in the 3rd grade have been in a combined class since for at least 2 or 3 years, so they're very familiar with that experience and the idea that I'm going to be learning this now while somebody else is learning something else. So they're familiar with that. And that was sort of our intent. That was why when we talked about this quite a few years ago and we were looking at the 4-5, it didn't seem to make sense to us. We've brought these K1s up. They've been together. So they're familiar with that. The other thing I wanted to point out is, Michael, of course we know those 3 kids aren't sitting by themselves all day. Kathy reported on that last year. They spend so much time with the other students in the building. In many ways, they probably already feel like a combined grade because, so I think actually the students will have the easiest transition of anyone because they are the ones who are used to being together and have been in a combined class for the last 2 years. We just have to leave enough time for the teachers and the administration to plan that. And I don't see why that planning couldn't happen. It doesn't. I don't think planning for the K2 precludes planning for a 3-4 or a 3-4-5 or whatever it is.
I agree. I wish it had happened in September.
I agree. I agree. We asked for that, though. I can't explain why that didn't happen, but that was the problem that was presented. We went through this last year and we said, please come up with a plan, and the plan didn't really address it. So it's kind of stuck us in a conundrum, which is unfortunate, but I don't think it's unsolvable. And I think not addressing it might present more issues. I don't know. I don't like to talk about the budget and the budget going down, but last year was really tenuous. And I have to say, I was really surprised that we put the teacher back and then Bridgewater still didn't pass the budget. So that was talk about mixed messages. That was really confusing to me. So it's not, so who goes out to vote isn't necessarily all about what just happened in the budget. I think there are a lot of things to read into that, and I don't have the tea leaves that give me the magic answer. But I'm nervous about the budget passing, and if the budget goes down, and it's been a long time, but when that happens, it takes like a month to get it back up. You go through the posting and the hearings and you figure out what to cut, and it's painful because you've already cut to get to 0. We would be going below 0. And I'd talk about that would be a really painful conversation, and it delays your planning a month. And if it goes down again, I mean, we've seen school districts that start their year and they don't know what they have to work with, and they have overcrowded kindergartens because they didn't hire an extra teacher because they didn't have money, and that's just terrible. So I think it would be better to plan now versus going through some crazy budget cycles.
May I make a suggestion? We're not going to vote on anything tonight, but we certainly have had, I think, a very full conversation about repercussions. Why don't we finish with the 700? There's some other cuts and some other things here that perhaps we have some questions. And then on the 20s, what we could do is ask Kathy and Pat together, or whomever, to make a presentation for next Monday about the steps they see they will take to accommodate these changes and present it to the board, and then we get into the numbers again, and either we agree or disagree. So at least there's a process that we can all buy into, if everyone's concerned about process. It's short timing, but I think you know, a thumbnail of where you are, what you think can happen. We know the specifics of the issue, and maybe that will help us so we can adopt the budget after other conversations on the 27th. Is that okay with everybody who's talking over there?
Go ahead.
Just for clarification, and maybe Bob can help us. Bob, next Monday is also the budget hearing. Remember, we moved it up a week? So can we still get to next week without a vote and a budget? Or do we then have to move to April 3rd? What do we?
We would be presenting the budget that's before us tonight. You gather the input from the public hearing, you reconvene, and then you finally set a budget that the board's going to go to the public with.
You can do that next Monday?
Why did we rush that process? I'm surprised.
We rushed it because Mr. Geeson is going to be on vacation, and last year he was on vacation, and the board was not happy that he wasn't here, and they had questions, and he goes on vacation every year at that time, so it's his fault.
The girls won again tonight, what can I tell you?
Yeah. Okay, I mean, how should we do this? On the 27th, we have a meeting, and we really need to do our fiduciary best here. We should go over all of the budget quickly, answer whatever questions, and we should have some kind of presentation by staff how to affect, we already know K2, but a 3, 4, and 5, or 3, 4, 5, however the staff wants to call it. So, how do we do this next Monday, the 27th? I mean, just, we have the hearing, then we have our meeting? Okay.
I think it's
Rebecca?
typically in the past, the board has presented a board-approved budget at the budget hearing, but I don't think it's required. Right now, we have a superintendent's proposed budget. If the board hasn't voted on a budget by the time of the budget hearing, we have the hearing, you hear from the public, then the board can come back and approve a budget.
Do our pruning, okay.
So we said it that night.
I think we can. I don't think there's anything prohibiting that
Okay.
from having the hearing before the board has actually approved a budget.
Okay, Rebecca?
I appreciate the attempt to try to get some more information out there before a vote is made, but I also am not necessarily comfortable giving Kathy and Pat a week to put something together. That just, for me, it speaks to why we're having this conversation in the first place. This is not a weak project. And with all due respect, I have no idea what's been done or what's not been done. But the fact that we had a whole bunch of people thinking it was a 3 to 5 configuration tonight means that decisions were still in process, everything was still fluid. So I don't think that that's fair. I don't think that that's appropriate. And I think that the fact that we're trying to throw it together at the last minute doesn't make it better. I think that we need to acknowledge that it's not going to just suddenly come together like magic, and we need to address the issue at hand and not pretend that it'll be okay a week from now.
Well, the reason why I'm mentioning that is that I know a lot of work has been done. I just want to see the summary, and then going forward into the end of next August, how this would be. But not doing anything is what?
Well, I think, I mentioned it before, I want to say it again. When I presented my budget and my conversations with Kathy, I have given her, in my eyes, 4 classroom teachers for 40 students. I told her, and this is the process now of planning, to work with her staff, Mrs. DeBrito, the parents, any board members, to develop the best plan for Burnham School with the 4 classroom teachers and then all the other staff that's there. So although we can give you a timeline of things we would do for next week, I don't think it's fair to say we can tell you it would be 3 and 4 or 3, 4, 5 or the 3rd graders are going. There are a lot of options, and I think if we put the minds and the creative minds together, they'll find some innovative options to make this work.
So I think next week we can present a timeline with parent meetings, community meetings, visits to schools, all of those things. But to say that we're going to have an answer of what it is, I don't think there's enough time for Kathy to really get the input from all the stakeholders.
Alan?
I mean, I think that we're just trying to salvage a horrible situation here, but I don't think that it's impossible. And I don't think that we need to like scurry around and try to do what we should have done since December in the next week. But I mean, Dr. Constantino, does Kathy have, you know, with what you said, the 4 staff members, and knowing of, you know, there's intervention and there's paras and whatever, does she have the, what's the word I'm looking for, the authority to figure that out as best she feels? Because I know there's different personalities, there's different skill sets, there's different people who could be that possible for. I mean, does she have control of that in order to make that the best possible? There aren't any other limitations as
Well,
far
right
as,
now,
you know,
the 4 staff members are they're in her current building.
right.
Okay? As you're aware, I am laying off some people, so I'm trying not to lay off anyone, and we do have a teacher who's probably going to go out on a leave. But, you know, I can speak to Kathy about who the staff members are, but other than that, she has every opportunity to make this work any way she wants, as long as she stays within the parameters of the budget that I've presented, and she knows that. And you know, and yes, absolutely, I think there's a lot of different creative things.
Right, and just because I asked, because, you know, as it's turned, you know, one thing that I don't think I don't know, but very often when you have to reconfigure multiple years, sometimes that isn't a budget cut. Now, in this case, because you're dealing with 4 kids, it probably is. You know, it would be unfortunate if it turns out that with all the research and the planning that you combine classes, but because of the curricula, you really can't cut staff. But I'm not sure. I don't know any better, but I'm not saying that that's, you know, a problem. But it may be in terms of, you know, the skill set and the experience of whoever the teachers are, there might need to be flexibility there. And I'm just trying to make sure that that's the case, because, you know, if you were combining classes for whatever reason on a multi-age track, you might need to have actually 2 grades together, but still 2 FTEs. As I said, I'm not thinking that's the case, but the FTE who remains to cover those, you have to make sure that that's the particular FTE that has the skill set to do that.
Well, I know that Mrs. Colella has talked to some of her staff, and she has people who are interested in you know, in the challenge and want to possibly do this. So I leave that in her hands, because she knows her staff, and remember, she has the staff of 2 schools, so she you know, she's a smart cookie. She'll be able to figure it out, and I have the utmost respect and confidence that they can do this. I really do. I say that honestly. I really do. I mean, I'm in that building often. I'm in all the buildings, and the staff is spectacular. They know how to make things work. And you know, and whatever support she needs, we're here for her. And the staff.
So how are we leaving things until next Monday? We will have the hearing on the budget as the superintendent has given it to us. And then we will, after that hearing, go over it again. And there are lots more things in here, but I think this is the meat.
Oh, you don't think we need to go over it more than budget?
Oh, I think we should.
I agree.
You know, but it's our due diligence. We should do it. But next week, we'll have the time to kind of go through some of those object codes that are not so overwhelming, and then kind of settle in on this. Are there any other questions now about that object code 700, which is the basis of most of the cuts, except for the capital expenditures that we're going to finance in a different way? Rebecca.
Looking at page 3 and page 4, we have a dollar increase and a percentage increase for that particular line. I was wondering, just because, you know, I want to go all the way in the opposite direction to the concept of if we maintained all of the positions, and I'm not saying that we would, But if we maintained all of the positions rather than cutting any positions, do we know what the percentage increase would be for the overall budget, not for these particular lines?
Bob?
Yeah, just to start, just to
Staff.
start there, with the staff. Yep. I'd rather you do the math than me.
You have this and this, it's,
Just because I want to know what we're talking about.
500,000 with the 2 pages, Bob.
Yeah, benefits.
Yeah.
Yep, benefits and salary.
100s and 200s. It's 337, 559, 162, 220.
So 500,000
Yep.
of 21. What was last year's?
Thank you.
Can you say that again? I didn't hear you.
2.33?
Percent increase in the budget
Thank you.
versus the zero.
For the all the staff.
And that's the 344,813 for everybody.
Plus the bennies.
Okay.
Thank you.
Greg?
Can I ask about the other reductions in
Sure.
paras, music teachers, certified? I understand the one for Burnham, obviously.
Yep.
So what, can we have an explanation of that?
I'm sorry.
Pat, the other cuts in personnel, for instance, the para and the music teacher district-wide, if you want to start there.
Yes. There are 2 paras that are being reduced. One will come from Booth Free, and one is yet to be determined once Ms. O'Hara does all of her magic with the schedules for our special education students. We'll reduce a paraprofessional. I'll come back to the music. At Chapag, even though we're going up in population due to creative scheduling, Kim and Lori and Karen are able to reduce a staff person. Still to be decided. I think it's going to be 1 person, although it may be 2 halves. But that's still in, we're still working on the schedule. At Washington, even though Mrs. Judd asked for an additional teacher in 3rd grade because of a high needs class, I turned her down. And the reason that they are losing 1 FTE is because they currently have 2 5th grades.
Right.
And they're going to have 1 next year. The music teacher is a teacher who works part-time at Chapag, does some of the band and strings also, or just band? Strings. And then he does band at the elementary. We had a long meeting today, and we're working with the music department to rearrange schedules to maybe be a little more creative in how we deliver not only the performances, but really the curriculum of music, which our teachers feel we need a little more emphasis on. We definitely do not need a full-time music teacher. I can tell you, if we were going to put wants there, I would love to have a 0.4, but I didn't do that because, as I said, I'm trying to make some hard decisions. But those are all of, but I think with the music, again, with our creative staff, we will be able to deliver a really great program. And you know, and we're working on it. We're working, you know, we lost in the elementary schools 28 students this year from last year. That's a big amount of students to lose. So, you know, that's where that came from.
So are you cutting the strings program at the high school?
Oh, no. No. Did I say that?
Well, you said you're eliminating the teacher that teaches strings. So are you
No,
cutting
I'm
the
sorry.
strings program or not?
No. David Raposo teaches strings and bands at the high school. And Beth Harvison teaches chorus. And there are a lot of bands. And there are a lot of music electives.
So
Ashley Kirk-
what are you cutting at the program at the elementary school?
Well,
You've
right now,
eliminated the teacher that teaches music at the elementary schools.
well, because we have less students, we're combining some classes.
Fewer.
We're trying to find, the only thing that right now is in jeopardy is fourth grade bands, although we are trying to be creative to see if we can do that. Our music staff feels that a lot of schools don't start band till fifth grade. That might be a possibility, but right now we're still in discussions.
Well, if we're still in discussions, how are we expected to vote on it? I think we need a plan in front of us next time. I want to see the classes that are going to be taught, when and where and who. And if we can't see that, then I'm not prepared to vote in favor of that change, or the entire budget at this point.
Well, that's okay.
We don't need to count pencils either. Okay,
Those are programs, not pencils.
moving on. Okay, any other conversation about the 700s? Any program changes or reductions of interest to the board? At least we can say we've done that. And then next Monday, we will go over the detail, if needed, with the supplementary material. Anthony?
So sorry, we were kind of you were looking to wrap up because I had some questions regarding the facilities number.
Oh, no, I'm not wrapping up.
Okay, then I could sit back, wait.
Yeah. I mean, on the 700s or the ones that are going to be financed through our other accounts?
Well, I guess it's sort of related because it's a 700 that didn't make it to this list. I don't think. So let me ask the question and then you can guide me.
Sure.
So we had the detail that behind the 1.2, call it 5 reductions from the submitted to from the staff's budget to the supervisor's budget. So I'm looking at some of these things. I just want to make sure I understand.
Can I interrupt for a minute? You're
Go
talking
here.
about the separate sheet of reductions that the board
yes.
wouldn't necessarily have.
Yeah, so I'm starting with the one that's capital facilities.
Right.
Okay. So when I look at the capital facilities, the first column are projects that were submitted that we're going to be able to fund with, I'll call it surplus or out of this year's budget. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Next column over is our projects that we're going to, the suggestion there is to use the 1% fund. So is that using the existing 1% fund, Bob, that we have a $500,000 to $600,000 balance on?
Correct.
Okay. And then on top of that, to kind of connect another dot here, we're also going to be considering taking 200 and something thousand out of this year's budget and
If it's available
contribute,
by the end of the year, right?
assuming it's available by the end of the year, and contribute back to the budget.
Correct.
So net, the 1% fund will wind up being down by 100,000, give or take.
Give or take,
So we'll wind up somewhere, let's say, around 500?
500 to 600, 5 to 550.
Okay. And then the elementary school is the next column. So then the last column, because I think the next one is self-explanatory, but the next one, it says need more information. It's about $108,000.
That was my notes with Don.
Right, so are those projects out of the budget then, I'm assuming?
No, they still remain in the budget.
So they're still in the budget?
Correct, and you'll see the total of those two is the same number that you find on page 9, I'm sorry. It's the same number that you find on page 9, the third number down, 122,000,
770.
Yep.
Those are the 14,450 and the 108,320.
Okay.
So that's the detail of what's the 122,770.
All right, I'm just making a note here. Thank you. Okay. And then, so I'm just kind of going down the attachments. So then going back to the sheet that I think Greg was just on. We're looking at, so I know these are small dollars, but sometimes these small dollars mean a lot to the particular teacher who may be putting this in. But so what is, when I see climate school improvement, what's the nature of that? Because it repeats itself at all three primary schools.
Right.
It's only $3,000 per school, but it was zeroed out. So what is it?
They were, the principals were asking for summer work for teachers to work on the school improvement plan. They do a lot of that work in PD and the first days of school. And so took it out.
It's not a physical thing, it's a program.
It's a program.
It's not really a program. They're
really
going to
not a
get the work done. They just wanted more time to do it over the summer.
Okay, thank you. Then I look at things like, you know, field hockey goals and, you know, and there's other like miscellaneous stuff. But I spent well, where'd she go? Where'd they all go?
They went home smartly.
I had the pleasure of spending a few hours last week with Mrs. Gambino in her technology class on a coding project that my corporation is sponsoring. And, you know, fantastic, probably the best 2 hours I've spent in the last 3 months. So I got to play, because it was an official corporate sponsored event, I got to do this legally and without any guilt. And I had a great time with those kids. We'll talk about that at another board meeting. But when I see things like, you know, Sheila asking for a couple of $1,000s worth of stuff, I think back as when I was sitting there and I was like, the energy these kids had, the energy she has, what she wants to do. I mean, that to me, that class was STEM in motion. We talked about problem solving and how to take it into mathematics, because it's disciplined, organized thinking, which transcends, I think, just about any subject. So then when I see her asking for a couple of $1,000s worth of stuff, I almost don't even want to ask her why. It's almost like, can I give you more? And it's just a few $1,000s, and we're, you know, we seem to be so hell-bent on keeping the budget to zero that a couple of small little items that could make a difference to a teacher like that, we're zeroing out. And I feel like we're overreaching in certain places on trying to find money. And I'm the one who was, you know, is always talking about our fiduciary responsibility, et cetera, but I just kind of wonder, you know, are those that important that we got to zero them out and we can't find the money?
Can I just say something?
Please.
Okay. I was trying to find what you were looking at. Almost everything on the top, district-wide, was from Sheila Gambino and myself.
I saw it, yeah.
The ones that were zeroed out on the bottom, honestly, we pretty much are buying the stuff now in this budget. So it's just, you know, we
So I'll ask the question this way, Pat.
Yeah.
Is Sheila getting what she needs?
Oh, yes.
Is she happy?
Sheila's very happy,
Okay.
believe me.
That's really what I was
Very
getting at.
happy. Sheila is leading the makerspace movement in the other 3 schools for me. So Sheila is very happy. We are very, I'm very proud of the fact that when staff ask for something, we get it to them. And when I meet with staff, especially people like Sheila Gambino, who have that tech, innovative, creative mind, I say, tell me what you want, just send me a purchase order. And that's how it works.
Okay.
So,
I'm the one that says no.
yeah, Bob may say no, but then I say, Bob, find the money.
Stop that.
I don't say no.
I have one last question before I give the
Sure.
floor. The 40,000 reduction in technology, speaking of another one of our rock stars, I'm assuming that's Karen?
Yep.
So what is it that she asked for that was not funded? So what's the
Jennifer,
40K?
Did you get the workshop papers? I'll be happy to share
The only I got
the
was,
detail.
so the package that Bob sent out had a cover sheet
Yeah.
that had the,
Oh, okay.
the summary.
Technology.
I didn't pull that.
Those were things that she was able to get out of this current year because of our purchasing earlier. We got better prices on the materials we needed this year. There was money left in her budget out of this year's budget.
Yeah, and that's the pre-buy, right?
That's what's going on.
But it says a 5% cut of 16, so what is there some?
She went through the other parts of her budget for things like toner and software because she was able to do district-wide licensing where they were doing individual ones before and came back with the reduction of that.
Okay,
I
so
will
sort
also
of,
tell you that one of my mandates to the staff was to cut either 5 or 10% of the supplies out of their budget, the cost, again, to tighten the belt. And so they all did that. But I also, again, if Karen needs something, we get it for her. And Bob is very good at having people pre-buy, especially when we get like in May when we know the budget's pretty solid and no one's going to move
Right,
back
as we're
in.
watching the budget, we're making sure that they can devote those resources to something that they absolutely need.
all right. Actually, I have one more thing, Michelle, sorry. You rest your hand.
It's all right. I was going to actually just talk about, it was just, because I pulled out Karen's stuff, and one of the things she mentioned was that they're able to do more repairs in-house because they're using the
Right.
Chromebooks that they're cycling out and
Yeah,
they're keeping the parts.
Yeah, I remember she saying she was cannibalizing those.
Yeah, so that was one of the reductions, so she just doesn't need to buy quite as many parts. So that was a savings.
Okay. Well, again, I mean, she's like one where I kind of perk up that if she's asking for something and we're saying no, I sort of start to worry, you know, and then say, okay, you know, try to figure that out.
Good.
So my last question was the scoreboard, or the lack thereof, out on the main field. We had a senior,
Which, the track field?
Yeah.
Taka? Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So we had a recent senior project where I forget exactly how he was trying to raise money, but the young man was trying to raise money to fix a shed, which was actually reinforcing the shed so we could possibly mount the scoreboard on top, et cetera, et cetera. I applaud his energy and trying to make a difference, but I also feel like, how is it that we don't have a scoreboard on our main field, where we have homecoming under the lights and we rent the equipment and there isn't a scoreboard in sight? How do we even know how much time is left? I mean, as a former soccer player, I mean, you know, being able to look up and look at the scoreboard and seeing how much time is left was important, not only to me, but and as onlookers, to see what's going on. And it seems like with all the money that we spend, we can't figure out how to find the money to put a scoreboard on that field. I mean, really. I mean, I think it's important for us. We put money into the mall, we put money into the teacher's lounge. I mean, to me, that's like, in terms of the athletic fields, I'm not suggesting we light the fields. I'm suggesting that we just put a scoreboard out there, the way we did with the pool.
We'll have a quote for you next week on
I mean,
Monday.
can we figure out to see if we can get
Well,
it inside this
yeah.
budget? So.
Well, yeah, we either add it or we'll reduce something. But yeah, okay, we'll have a quote.
Have you mentioned this to the Facilities Committee?
Actually, I had a brief conversation with Matt Parachi at the time, the student, because I was more curious about why we had a shed that needed repair, where we needed a fundraising activity by a senior to fix a shed. I think that was just inarticulate description that the young man sent out with his note, because it was more than I did talk to then Greg, to figure that out, and Greg educated me that it was actually reinforcing the shed so we could actually structurally mount the scoreboard on top. And then that's what Matt was explaining. Well, there's that option, there's this option, and then there's another option, and then there's what we do today, which is somebody holds up I guess a card or screams. So, yes, I think I did, Valerie, sorry.
Okay.
Long answer, but
Michelle?
yes.
I just wanted to say that I got a quote for a solar one because we don't have power over there. A couple years, and gave it to Matt and talked to Matt. It was a company that I was actually taking pictures of scoreboards at like all the Berkshire League schools that we go to see who made them, like the thing. So anyway, so I know Matt, it's been on his list and on his mind, and it just doesn't ever make it to the top, but maybe it will now.
I'd like to give him a little help.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I thought you'd be supportive.
Absolutely. I've been trying for like 4 years to get it to the top of the list.
All right.
Somehow the pole vaulting Nats beat me out like 2 years ago. I don't know.
Well, you're next up.
Well, should we wrap this up for tonight? And we will go over this, and in the other areas, they need our attention too. I just want one piece of good news here. My favorite section, 512, has gone down.
No way.
Well, almost. I
Oh,
mean,
relative.
From 97,000 to 96, I wrote through at 693, and that's the in-district transportation we provide to private schools, which aggravates the heck out of me.
Yeah, because their population's going.
Yeah. So we will.
All right, so thank you all. Our next meeting is Monday. The district budget hearing starts at 7 o'clock. That's in the auditorium, so please try to be on time.
Yes, thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.